should I be PC?
No. I actively encourage swearing. It's the Scottish way.
Bollocks, wanker, shit, piss. Fantastic. There you go.
A perfect way to start. Dragon here once again, and extremely honoured and delighted to be joined by the wonderful Big Mike Leeder, writer, casting director, actor, producer, commentator extraordinaire, a man of many hats.
No, actually, I never look good in a hat. It's like
I can only wear hats at this point. I have no head.
My problem is if I wear a hat, it's I can't wear hats and I can't wear colors. Like years ago, I remember when Jackie Chan's First Strike came out, they gave me a jacket. Golden Harvest gave me a Jackie Chan First Strike jacket, and my old flatmate Mike Miller was like, "Well, why aren't you wearing it?" I was like, "Let me put it on." They put it on. He went, "You look ridiculous." I went, "Exactly." I was like, "You're black and blue and grey. That's fine. But anything else, I look like I look very weird." So it's all thing. But
timeless.
Yeah, but actor is normally only when there's no budget to bring anyone in, and it's it's like, well, Mike, you look like a bad guy anyway, so you can come and play this character. So yeah.
What came first? I'm assuming that writing was your very first kind of connection to to Asian cinema.
Yeah. How to say? I'm from the olden days. I'm from the days before the internet, before legit video releases of a lot of films, and before like when I was just I was video shop boy. I was the guy running around going to every video shop, and especially the ones that didn't care if you're under 18 and would just rent anything to you.
Same here.
Yeah, and just I fell in. The funny thing is, all my friends in England give me shit about it because I used to be the guy who made fun of kung fu movies, and I'm the guy who ended up moving here and making them. Because my friends would always watch the worst movies. And I would always be like, these are shit. These are so stupid. And then one day we bunked off school. I mean, we decided to take some personal time for ourselves. And we had a double bill on Betamax of Snake and the Eagle Shadow and Drunken Master, like from a rank video with the Neil Adams artwork. And I was like, holy shit, these movies are fantastic. Obviously I've just been watching the wrong ones all the time. And I started watching everything. And then I started like chasing Rick Baker around in London, and he'd be telling me, "Oh, watch this, go and see this," and started going to like there used to be a cinema called the Metro, just off Chinatown, that would show Chinese movies in the afternoon, and then I'd go to like the late night cinema, and then I did some writing for Rick for Eastern Heroes and some stuff for Combat and MAI, and then I was working a really boring mainstream job. I was working in a department store, and I was bored shitless. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a leave of absence, and I'm going to go to Hong Kong and just hang out for a couple of weeks, and maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get to see a movie being made or something, and then I'll come back. And then I came out here and never left. And then just started off as a very bad actor, and which I'm perhaps I still am to this day, and realized that I was a terrible martial artist, but I knew that, and I didn't have the dedication to train hard enough, which I kind of regret because I've kind of trained badly with a lot of people. Like, I've had opportunities to train with a lot of people. Like, one of my first friends in Hong Kong was Jeff Falcon from like Six String Samurai and Inspector Wears Skirts, etc. And I just found an old VHS tape that I'm going to get digitized, and it's him teaching the young, skinny, long-haired Mike Leeder wushu, and just complaining that I shouldn't learn wushu because I'm too tall. Because like,
your center of gravity is too high.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, and Jeff's right. Like, if you're over a certain height, one of the reasons Jet Li looks so good is, of course, he's exceptional, but he's the right height. The taller you are, the more awkward you look. So, like, there's a friend of mine, Paul Rapowski, the bad guy in Hitman and everything, and he's 6'4", and he can flip and do 720 something, but it just looks awkward and scary as shit because you're like, there's too much body coming through the air. It doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So I came to Hong Kong and just played around with it, like a bit of wushu. I'd studied some Wing Chun and some kickboxing in England, and like, kind of, I said, I regret a little bit that I never took it more seriously, the martial arts training. Like, kind of dabbled, said, learned a bit of wushu, kickboxing, Wing Chun, played around with like weapons for a while, and I realized I never found that foundation style. Like Jeff had it with wushu, my old flatmate Mike Miller had it with taekwondo. I just never found the style that went, yeah, this is it. This is the one that I'm gonna like build from. So like I just kind of like goofed around, and I realized I wasn't dedicated enough. So I would normally be the non-fighting white guy. Yeah, I'd be the guy who got hit first, or fired guns, or just lurked in the background. And I was still running for Rick and for Eastern Heroes, and like for combat, and started running for Inside Kung Fu and Black Belt, and just progressed from there, and just and then started getting asked to help cast movies and work as a consultant, and it kind of all went from there.
Cool, because Ricky is basically our big shared connection. So since he relaunched Eastern Heroes the most recent time, and I'm sure he pulled you in for issue 1. I think I've been doing a lot of
I love Ricky because, without sounding cheesy or anything, Ricky, I blame you for everything. Yeah, because Ricky was like, my parents were like, you're gonna go to Hong Kong? Ricky was like, yeah, you should go to Hong Kong. That'd be cool, man. And I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, you're right, it would be. And he introduced me to movies that I probably never would have seen, and everything. And and Ricky's just a good dude. I mean, Ricky's one of those guys, if he does something wrong, it's not intentional. And like and yeah, I mean, he's a major reason why a lot of people got access to movies and saw films and everything. Some of them may not have been as legitimate as others, but he helped get films out there. I mean, the first time I saw Eastern Condors was with Rick. First time I saw Rouge, like one of the first non-action Hong Kong movies I really liked was with Rick. I remember Rick called it back in the old days. Like, Rick called me. For some reason, I called Rick about something. He goes, "Oh, Painted Faces is showing this afternoon at the Metro for like one screening at like 5 o'clock." And I was at work, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna pull a sickie." And I was like, you guys, I got food poisoning. And I headed up to London, met Rick, and went to saw Painted Faces. I mean, Jesus, it just sounds like a very big worship of Rick, but I don't think people now realize, especially back in the day, how hard it was to get information on movies and everything. I mean, and like when I first moved to Hong Kong,
very scarce. Yeah.
I thought that, I'm going to get to Hong Kong. Hong Kong's British colony, official languages, English and Cantonese. Everyone's going to speak English. There'll be English language press. I'll be able to buy merchandise. I'll be able to buy everything. I got to Hong Kong, and 30 years later, the English press still has no clue about Hong Kong cinema. Which is why I often take the piss out of the local press, because they'll do interviews with, huge Western star, and I'm like, this person hasn't done anything. This is all bullshit. Like, do some research, guys. Or they'll do an interview and be like, yeah, so did you know Bruce Lee? And you're like, dude, the guy was 4 when Bruce Lee died. Like, I remember I interviewed Lo Gong, and he'd just been interviewed by Inside Kung Fu, and he was like, why did they begin the interview by asking me if I knew Bruce Lee? And he's like, I was in Cambodia. I was 4 years old. Like, I didn't know anything. And I think people forget that now you can Google everything. You can track down copies. There's streaming. There's digital. Like, if you told me back in like 1989, 1990 that most physical shops would have an Asian film section, and the films would be available in original language and dub, and with a choice of extras and stuff, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have been like, yeah, whatever. I'm from the days when, if you were lucky, the film was letterbox for the opening credits, and then it went to full screen. And like, I get shit from Sammo Hung about it to this day. Like, I wasn't a Bruce Lee fan in England because the only Bruce Lee movies I'd seen had been the really badly cut version. So like
we had no nunchucks here in the UK at all.
yeah, it's like Fist of Fury, everyone's fighting, suddenly everyone in the dojo, suddenly everyone's on the floor holding their heads, and I'm like, this is stupid. And then like Way of the Dragon, there was no alleyway fight. Bruce Lee walked into and came straight back in. I was like, oh, he's so fast, right? Like, ha ha ha, And the funny thing was, Enter the Dragon I loved, and Game of Death to this day is still a guilty pleasure. Like, despite Game of Death being at the time like ridiculously badly cut, I just love that movie. I think it's the opening credits and
amazing score,
everything. So, yeah, I mean, back then it was so hard to get information. I mean, that's why, like, say Rick Meyer's book there, From Bruce Lee to the Ninjas, for its time, that book is excellent. Yeah, there's a hell of a lot that's not as correct now when you realize, but for a time when there was no easy information, and the funny thing is, when I first read, I was realizing, like, you know how in England and Scotland, I think there's merchandise, there's movie poster stores, and you can buy posters and lobby cards and stuff. I came to Hong Kong thinking that will be here.
Every street corner.
Yeah. I did. People like, why would you want to buy a poster for that movie? What do you mean you want a lobby card? They're for the cinema. Yeah, like there was no collector's market here. I think one reason was because Hong Kong apartments are small. People were like, oh, you can't really collect movies. So most people, if they had movies, had maybe like karaoke discs, like Laserdiscs and everything, or like select movies. And when people complain about the price of a Blu-ray or something now, I'm like, guys, Laserdiscs in Hong Kong used to be like £75, like between £50 and £75 for a non-subtitled movie, And yeah, I arrived here and I was like, okay, there's no merchandise, there's no thing, but I do have a set of Allen keys, and I would quite happily open bus stops and poster things and take posters. And because cinemas would be like, no, I can't give you the poster. And you're like, well, what are you going to do with it? We're going to throw it away. Well, can't you admit? No, we have to throw it away. We can't do that. And like Golden Harvest and everything were very non-foreign press friendly. Like, you'd call up and they'd be like, no. And you'd realize they don't understand the international press or the international market. And like, it was kind of like hard, like realizing that the Shaw Brothers movies had never been released on video here. So like, whereas imagine if James Dean, only people of a certain age remember James Dean because those movies had never been seen again. Like, so, it was like Bruce Lee, everyone knew, Jack Chan, everyone knew, but you talk about Alexander Foucheng or Gordon Liu or Dave Chen, people like, oh, those guys are in like supporting roles, or like they're on TV now. And so it was a kind of a big eye opener. I mean, it was, I will say, as cliched as it sounds, I fell in love with Hong Kong the minute I arrived. I just felt, this is it. This is cool. This is the place. And the funny thing is, I made a couple of friends within the first couple of days who 30 odd years later are still friends of mine. I was just in China for the announcement of a movie I'm producing, and the director is a guy called Fong Dumlick, and I met him on the set of a Jackie Chan movie like days after I arrived because I'd gone up to Golden Harvest and like basically snuck in, And at the time, Fong had literally just started working for Jackie, and Jackie was like, "Oh, you'll be the translator." And 30 odd years later, we're finally working together properly on something. Cool. We were meant to work together on the Lucky Stars movie that Sammo did that sadly was never finished. So it's like, I said, like, I mean, I met Jeff Falcon, I think the second or third day I was in Hong Kong. I knocked him over. I was running for the ferry. I knocked this guy over. I was like, I'm really sorry. Hey, you're the guy from Inspector Wears Skirts. And he was like, who are you? And then like I met John Salvetti and Donnie Yen and Michael Woods at like a midnight screening of Skinny Tiger, Fatty Dragon. And it sounds to me, it just felt right. So I ended up just staying. And so like I was working as a writer. I was teaching English part-time, which everyone did, working on movies. And then doing all kinds of stuff. But it was just it was really fun. So yeah.
How did the transition happen into moving into kind of? Cause I know that you'd started doing stuff behind the camera quite early on. So kind of when did you start moving into kind of doing casting direction?
It was pretty early on. Like I just a couple of times got asked to do like, could I help with like say rewrite press notes or rewrite synopsis or do this or do that. And I think there was like a documentary. I think it was like I remember I got a job because someone recommended me. Oh, there's this documentary coming, and they kind of need like a Hong Kong liaison. And this was back in the day of very expensive international phone calls and fax machines, and like it was really complicated trying to communicate. Sometimes because you'd be like, "Oh, geez, I've got to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning to catch this person on the phone," and then like international calls were ridiculous and everything. And then I just found it was like it's a face built for behind the camera. So
Mike.
So I just kind of like started doing stuff behind the camera and just never stopped. And then like I'll admit that for a while I was kind of like, I can earn money doing other stuff, and like I guess film and everything is like going to be part-time and everything, because there was always that thing of consistent work. It'd be like you get really busy and then suddenly there'd be a couple of months of nothing and everything. You'd be like, geez, maybe I do have to have something that could like make some money and everything. So it was kind of that, but probably about from 95, 96, it pretty much became just full on always doing movies and stuff. And I managed some bars and did other stuff because people gave me the opportunity to have flexible time. Like a whole bunch of times I got offered jobs that financially would have been really good, but they were like, you can't have time off. Yeah. And I'd be like, and the best example of that was about 12 years ago. I ended up in the French Congo to do a movie for a Chinese company. And the French Congo is not a very good place to hang out. And the director and production manager stole all the money, cancelled off tickets, and left.
Oh, God.
And one morning I come down for breakfast, and one of the reception people is like, "Oh, yeah, the director and the producer have left." I'm like, "They went outside." They're like, "No, they left." I was like, "What do you mean?" And I called the two guys, and they weren't answering their phones. And they're like, I called the producer, and he's like, "What do you mean they left?" And the producer in China's like, "But I sent them all the money." And in the Congo at this time, everything was still cash, cash, cash. And they basically had run off with all the money, cancelled our flight tickets.
Oh, my God.
And it took me like 2.5, 3 months to get back, because basically the Chinese producer was like, I can't send you money because I don't have any more. Like, I've sent everything. But he was like, I'm going to get in big trouble with the Chinese government if I screw up this thing, because it was a kind of like a co-production between the French Congo and China. So he was like, look, I'm going to send money in dribs and drabs. And every time he sent money, I could like let some of the crew go, pay their bills and everything. And the producer was like, Mike, you're a British passport holder. The worst case scenario, I was like, I know I could call the British consulate and be like, help. So
send you back to the UK then.
Yeah, so I finally got back to Hong Kong, and like I spoke to my dad, and my dad, God bless him, was like, well, where's the compensation? I was like, I'm alive. That's the compensation. He was like, yeah, but aren't they going to pay you compensation? I was like, no, And that was when I went, you know what? Screw the movie industry. Everyone's a dick. I'm going to go and get a serious job. Just no more movies, everything for me. And a friend of mine was like, you want to come manage this bar for me? I was like, yeah, sure. And about 2 weeks later, I was like, can I take a week off to go and do a commercial? And, and as cheesy as it may sound, like there's been ups and downs, and there's been good times, bad times, but it's been so much fun. It's like I just did some special features for the German release of Pound of Flesh. And Pound of Flesh was without doubt one of the hardest movies I've ever been involved with. Everything that could happen that shouldn't happen happened on that movie. like we had fights on camera, off camera, chaos everywhere. But it was one of the best experiences of my life. I got to work with like, Darren Shalavi, God bless him, who I'd known since England. Like I'd met Darren in England, and me and Darren shared the same birthday. He was a couple of years younger than me, and me and him would be like giggling together, like, 20 years ago we had fucking Van Damme posters on our walls. Now we're making a fucking movie with him, and you're fighting him, and I'm producing it, and everything. And we had Brahim and John Salvetti and Mike Muller and Ernie Barbarash, and it was just a Van Damme was being Van Damme, which is good and bad, and and like, but it's like memories that, it's as cheesy as it sounds, they're fantastic, and it was interesting to like really revisit Pound of Flesh and remember like stuff that had happened, and it's the same thing. It's like, I got to get beaten. I don't really get to fight Van Damme. He just beats the shit out of me. But I got to get the shit kicked out of me by Van Damme in a fight scene. That's really fucking cool. And it's like, I got to work with Darren, who was one of my best friends, and the same with things like Ip Man 2 and Ip Man 4 and Chaser, and it's like there's those moments where you go, the little kid in me, like when I worked on Rogue One, and I got to see my name in the Star Wars blue font. I had friends sending me pics from the premiere who'd taken pictures, and I was like, my 10-year-old self would be happy. My 10-year-old, and I came here as a fan, and I'm still a fan. I'm still. They like, and I think if I stopped being a fan, I'd probably leave. And like, it's very easy to play that game of like, oh no, I'm very serious now. I can't be a thing like that. Like the other day at the press conference, I'm just about to walk on stage and give my speech in like really bad Cantonese and Mandarin, and then I get a message from Donnie, literally just I'm walking on stage, and he's like, "Mate, Ip Man 5. It's confirmed." And I'm like, "Oh fuck!" And he sent me on the press release, and I was like, "I don't want to go on stage and talk about my movie."
That was one of the things I was going to bring up.
So yeah, I was messaging him back and forth, and they're going, "Ladies and gentlemen, producer Mike Leeder," and I'm like, and like, because I knew it was coming, and like Flashpoint, we've talked about a couple of times. Like, there was even at one point talk of doing a Flashpoint TV series, like and everything, and it's just. The frustrating thing is sometimes that I hear or know about projects and I can't talk about them.
Of course,
like I knew Dolph Lundgren was coming back for Creed 2 for about a year and a half before they announced it, because Dolph's manager, an agent, is a very good friend of mine. He called me up and was like, "Mate, I got to tell you something I want." He goes, "But you can't tell me what I want." He goes, "Ivan Drago's coming back." I was like, "Oh Jesus!" And he's like, "You can't tell anyone." I was like, "Oh." And like. That's the thing sometimes that I don't think people get, that it's like like there's stuff sometimes that we've shot, something that's never been released, like Iron Man 3. We spent 3 weeks shooting Wu Jing and Iron Man fighting the terrorists from part 1 in the deserts of China. And that footage was screened once and has never been seen ever again. Because Marvel was like, where the hell did this all come from? Like, you guys were meant to shoot extended scenes for China like this, not this. And it was really cool because it was, like Iron Man in the clunky suit, and Wu Jing is the special forces operative who was in like, that bizarre part of the Middle East. It's set in, and we had like a really good friend of mine, Tony Lin, who sadly passed away, who was one of Wu Ping's team, choreographing it. There was a friend of mine, Toma Oz, who's like a Israeli guy who used to be in Shanghai, who did a whole bunch of movies with Jackie, like Dragon Blade. He's like the head terrorist. We show all the stuff, and it's just never been seen. And like Chasing the Dragon, we had a completely different ending originally, and it's like we shot it, and then they decided to reshoot it, and the original ending was like, how to say, it was this bizarre. It was so cool because we're sitting on set and there's me and Wong Jing and Donnie and Andy Lau discussing all this stuff. Like, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And I'm just like, this is awesome. This is so cool. And we shot it. And the problem was, it needed to be bigger. Like, it was this very cool, dramatic confrontation, but the action wasn't as big as I wanted. So they ended up making it bigger. And then up until about a week before Chasing the Dragon came out, we were talking about it maybe being Chasing the Dragon 1 and 2, because we shot so much. And then it just like, they were like, no. And it's just, there's sometimes stuff that you shoot that you just go, like, and then you get people going, oh, well, can't you just release it? And I'm like, no, it's like, and then sometimes I think people are like, a couple of months ago, I posted some of the rushes from the Lost Timex movie, the Black Ninja. And some guy messages me, he's like, well, why haven't you remastered it in HD? And why have you done this? And I was like, because it's from a moldy VHS that I found sitting at the bottom of a box in my, because a couple of months ago I was sorting through stuff and I found, a whole bunch of DV tapes. I'm digitizing them, but Hong Kong's really bad humidity and like tapes go off, and it's like something like, okay, I'm gonna care for it. It's like I was like, but this person was like, yeah, but why isn't it HD? I've got Timex messaging me going, this is awesome. Do you have any more? And I'm going, well, there's a couple of other tapes I've got to digitize. And I think sometimes it's like people don't realize that the efforts that get made by companies like Eureka and 88 and Kino Lorber and Arrow with the upcoming box set and everything, there's sometimes the problem is there's not the budget to release everything. Sometimes some stuff is ridiculous rights issues. Like, there is so much stuff that was shot for Japan that just contractually is almost impossible to officially release, because it's like you'll sign a contract to go, oh, I'll wear this silly hat, but it can only be shown in Japan. Yeah. And then years later, it's like, well, if you want to pay me X amount of money, and the companies in Japan are like, oh, well, we don't want to bother, we don't want to chase up and go, is it okay? And it's, and sometimes, or a company will ask for silly money, and it's just, like it's sometimes it's really hard because the same thing is sometimes companies don't know they have it. Sometimes companies don't know there's an alternate cut. Like when Celestial started releasing the Shaw Brothers movies, nobody in Hong Kong had seen those movies for 30 years. Nobody at Celestial knew they had a different cut of Chinatown Kid. And the problem was, there's lots of bizarre politics. Like Celestial had moved into the old Shaw Brothers, and behind Shaw, the office they were using, Shaw House, was a warehouse full of materials, full of posters, lobby cards, the original negatives from the photo shoots, like including all the unused ones and continuity books. But nobody from Shaw's was going to volunteer, like, oh, hey, just to let you know,
we've got all this stuff.
All those films. There's a warehouse here full of extra stuff.
Yeah,
and some films just disappear, and it's the same way. Like when you realize that certain people internationally have a name that they don't have in Hong Kong, like Bolo. In Hong Kong knows who Bolo is. Like literally, if you, me, and Bolo were having a fight, people would be like, "Why are those two white guys beating up an old Chinese guy?" Nobody would go, oh my God, it's Bolo Young. And Bolo was clever enough to realize, wow, I can have an international market, but I can then have my normal life in Hong Kong and China and nobody will bother me. So like if Bolo's walking around, the Westerners, the Filipinos, the Nepalese, maybe the overseas Chinese will recognize him. But most people are like, how do you know Bolo? Like he's not even an extra anymore. And things like, say, the IFD movies, they never got released in Hong Kong. Like Joseph Lai would always laugh with me and go, I couldn't compete, but I could release my movies in Zambia and in Germany and everywhere. So when I first came to Hong Kong, part of it was just being like, okay, this is a totally different world. It's the same way some of the alternate endings, even the actors have never seen. Like I remember we were doing something with Robin Shu, and I showed Robin Shu the UK version of Tiger Cage 2, where it had Cynthia Khan, and he was like, "What the fuck's this?" He's like, "Where did that come from?" He had no memory of even shooting it because he was at the time he was under contract to D&B, so they're like, "Oh, you're going to film an extra fight scene."
Yeah.
Okay, you know,
and it's just another day at work.
Yeah, and like one of the craziest was, okay, we all know Enter the Fat Dragon with Sammo, okay, and of course Lee Hai Sheng has the politically incorrect role as basically Jim Kelly. I was doing an interview with Lee Hai Sheng, and he's a very regal, he's a true martial artist and he's a lovely guy, but he's very, yes, I am a martial artist. And we're changing the tapes for the interview. And I said, "Oh, one of my favorite roles for you, just because it's so funny, is, Enter the Fat Dragon, where you play the African-American character." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "No, the movie where you, Lung Iron, and a white guy are fighting Sammo, and blah, blah." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, 1 minute, like, get out my laptop, and I show him, and he was like, "That's me." Yeah, he's like, when did this movie get made? When did it come out? And it was that thing of realizing that for us, we're like, this is the greatest movie of all time. For him, it was 3 days' work.
Yeah,
3 years ago. I remember interviewing Wong Lung Wei, and we're talking about 5 Deadly Venoms, and I'm going, how cool it is because you don't fight. Your character's so cool. And he's like, "No, I was being fucking punished. Like, Chang Chia was angry with me, so Chang Chia was like, I'm not going to let you fight because you've annoyed me. This is your punishment." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're so cool," because like, "No, it's so bad." And and it's that same thing, like Story of Ricky. In Hong Kong, nobody knew Story of Ricky, or they remembered it as the movie that destroyed Fan Xiu Wong's career. Because before Story of Ricky came out, Fan Xiu Wong was going to be the next big thing. He was meant to do 3 Shaolin Musketeers: Fan Xiu Wong, Aaron Kwok, and this guy Dickie Jern. He was meant to do more movies with Golden Harvest. I remember his mother and father wanted me to come and live with Fan Xiu Wong and teach him English, and like to help groom him so he could get into international movies. And then Story of Ricky came out, and everyone in Hong Kong went, "This movie is just out there." Boom. And his career was screwed for years, which is why, like, when we did the interview with him for the old Hong Kong Legends DVD, he's so openly going, "This movie is so stupid. Like, I've got cheap intestines, and this movie is so messed up." Because he was like, "This movie destroyed me." And only now he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, it kind of like has this cult thing." And it's like Eastern Condors. Nobody really took much notice of Eastern Condors in Hong Kong. And it's that weird thing of certain movies, work so well in certain territories. And, it's the same way, even people's names. Like, because you meet actors who have no idea of this English name they have. Because, like the best example being David Chang from Shaw Brothers, who, despite his Chinese name being Gern Dai Wei being David, he's like, "No, my English name is John."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're David." No, I'm John Chang. And I'm like, "Yeah, but Dai Wei actually means David." He's like, "Yeah, but I chose my English name and I chose John." And even better is like the Philippines, because in the Philippines, Donnie Yen is Michael Ryan. Because they just go, "Oh, we have to rename people." So like Frankie Chan is the brother of Jackie Chan. Jeff Falcon is the arch rival of Van Damme. And they would just be like, "Okay, Fanatical Dragon, that's not a good title. Super Fanatical Dragon. Yeah, that makes it better." And I remember me and Darren Shalavi were in the Philippines shooting some terrible movie. And we drove past a cinema, and it had a Gary Daniels movie playing. And we were like, "Okay, let's go see it." And the poster said, "Gary Daniels, Bruce Lee's brightest disciple, contemporary of Chuck Norris, and the man who killed Jean-Claude Van Damme in the 1992 Bloodsport Invitational." And I remember taking a picture of the poster and just being like, "You can't say your Van Damme is dead." And it was a movie called Capital Punishment, which is like Gary Daniels, David Carradine. And it was just, they're like, "No, we have to claim this." And they'd be like, Once Upon a Time in China 3, US $150 million budget. I remember there was an Ultraman movie playing, and it was just after Jurassic Park came out, and there was a dinosaur in it, so it was Ultra Jurassic Park. You know? And like Yukari Oshima in the Philippines is Cynthia Luster, you know, very bizarrely. And Yukari, while she was in the Philippines, picked up Tagalog, the language, speaks it very well. I remember talking to her one time, she goes, "The world is very stupid, Michael. What do you mean?" And she'd done a Japanese movie, and all the reviews went, "Hey, this Filipino girl speaks really good Japanese." And she was like, I'm not Filipino, I'm Japanese. I'm like, "No, but your name is Cynthia Luster." And she was like, "No, my real name is Yukari Oshima." You know, and they were like, "Huh?" And it's that very bizarre thing of like, even music, like certain. Okay, this is going to sound very bizarre. Do you know the band Air Supply? Okay, yeah. You know, Air Supply in Hong Kong is huge. Like a friend of mine was doing a music video. She goes, "Oh yeah, I've got hired to play the love interest in this music video, but I've never heard of the band." And I went, "Who is it?" She goes, "Air Supply." I was like, "Oh, I know Air Supply. Yeah, making love out nothing to whatever." And then she told her mum, and her mum was like, "I need to come to the set. Yeah, I need to see these people." You know, and it's that weird thing of certain things hit for certain markets. So, you know,
I think there's an element that it's the grass is always greener, because particularly we're in this weird place just now with, if you look at it through particularly through a UK or through a US slant, it would seem like we're in this incredible golden age for Hong Kong cinema being released. But the Hong Kong labels, kind of like Mantelab, only putting out Western movies, really. So
yeah, I mean, I've actually had this. Part of the problem was the Hong Kong market in the 80s and early 90s was perfect. You could pre-sell a movie. I've got these people in the movie. Okay, I'll buy the movie for this much money. And people, I think, unfortunately, got lazy. They stopped things like Ashes of Time. Okay, I love that movie, but there's always been one shot in it that always confused me. And then a couple of years ago, I got to work on a Europe Raiders that Wangawi was producing and rewriting and changing everything every day, and it's chaos. But I was like, "It's Wangawi. I don't care. I'm just going to be there and hang out." And I bought Kung Lee and Gigi Yadin over for it. And one night we're talking, and I said to Wangawi, I said, "Hey, can I ask a question?" He goes, "What?" I said, "There's a shot in Ashes of Time, and I'd swear it's Wong Jo Yin." And I tell him to see it. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's her." I was like, "But she's not in the movie." He goes, "Oh yeah, but her market for Korea was so strong. As long as she was in the movie, we got like $1 million US guarantee." So I cut her out of the movie because she'd left. I think she'd had a disagreement with Wong and left, so they'd only had a couple of days. But he was like, "As long as I had one frame, or so,
you could sell the whole movie to Korea."
Money. And like, there's a movie called Eternal Fist, which is like a crazy post-apocalyptic movie shot in the Philippines with a guy called Dale Apollo Cook, who did a bunch of movies like Triple Impact, Double Blast. I think you might get the idea of the kind of movies they were, you know, and Raw Target. Kind of sound like Van Damme movies, you know. And Dale did this movie called, like Eternal Fist, and Cynthia Khan's in it playing two characters. She's the only Chinese character in the entire movie. There's never any explanation of are these two characters related or anything. But the same thing, because her market was so strong, Davian were like, "Okay, we'll hire Cynthia Khan for this movie because we can get all our money back just from the Korean pre-sale." You know, and it's like the same with Western movies. Like I was lucky enough to meet Mark Dacascos in the early 90s, just after he'd done Crying Freeman. And I've kept in touch with Mark over the years, and we've worked together since and always keep in touch.
I interviewed him like 2 weeks ago.
And yeah, I mean, he's such a good dude. Like he should have been the biggest star of all time, you know. And I still hope he is, you know, like, you know. But like a producer friend of mine goes, "Oh, I like Mark Dacascos, but he cost me a lot of money." I went, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Because I bought Crying Freeman for Korea, parts 1 and parts 2. I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, I pre-bought Crying Freeman 2. Because they were like, "Oh, this movie's going to be so successful, we're going to go straight into the sequel." and that movie and only recently got it still never had an official physical release in America.
No,
because because Samuel Hadida, God bless him, I think part of it was once it got an American sale, everyone had to get all their adjustments and everything. And Samuel Hadida was like, I made enough money from around the world, and then also they weren't offering him the deal he wanted. And Craig Freeman's awesome on the small screen, but if you get to see it on the big screen, it's thing. And that's something I do miss from when I first get to Hong Kong. When I first get to Hong Kong, everything got cinema release. Every Hong Kong movie, every Taiwanese movie, every American B movie. I got to see movies like Nemesis on the big screen.
I remember
Olivia Gooden was like, "You saw this on the big screen? Like where?" And I literally used to go to the cinema 5 nights a week. And I'd just be like, okay. And also it was £2 to go to the cinema. So I was like, I'm going to the movies. And it was also overwritten. I mean, so when I first came, the problem was, I got very long-winded off track, but yeah, I think the Hong Kong market was, without being pretentious, kind of like, it was one of those wheels that okay, it's so good. We're getting faster and making all this money, but the momentum's getting faster. Eventually, it's going to go off track. And I think that's what kind of happened in the mid-90s. And then with the China market, the same thing. Nobody forces everyone to make these movies. I was talking to someone about this the other day. I said, look, if you look back at, say, the box office of Ebola Syndrome made no money. It was a flop in Hong Kong and everything. Even a movie like, say, Dragons Forever, it made a certain amount of money, but people were very happy with that money they were making. But then suddenly they're like, I can make even more money with the China market. And everyone focused on the China market instead of going, okay, let's adapt. Everyone just went, okay, I'll change all my resources straight to China. And even a lot of China producers are like, we miss Hong Kong movies. If you have an explanation of why these people are speaking Cantonese, we have no problem with it. A lot of people claim, the censorship. Okay, look at Raging Fire. Raging Fire has corrupt policemen, which according to everyone isn't allowed. I go, guys, it's not as black and white as you think, which is also part of the problem for filmmakers, because you can make a movie today and the day before the movie comes out, they go, Big Mike pissed us off. All movies with Big Mike are banned. You're like, So it can be awkward sometimes, but the same thing, most countries are the same. If you go to, The King and I is still banned in Thailand because you can't talk about the royal family. And I recently had a producer contact me and were like, oh yeah, Mike, I want to make this movie. Blah, blah, blah. And I was going, well, I think it might be better to shoot it in Thailand. They're like, because of the terrible political situation in Hong Kong. And I went, no, because it would be cheaper to shoot it in Thailand and you get all the rebates. And there's unfortunately no rebate in Hong Kong for shooting. And the guy was like, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, dude, I said, you can't go to the Philippines and do a movie that's about certain things. Same way you can't go to Korea and do certain things, or Indonesia, or The Year of the Living Dangerously is set in Indonesia, but they shot it in the Philippines because they're talking about Suharto at the time. And the same thing, you go, a lot of countries have those issues. The Marco Polo TV series, 95% of that, the first season, shot in Malaysia. All the sex scenes were shot in Thailand because you couldn't film those scenes in Malaysia because it would be against the law. And you go, so everyone's very quick to just go, yes, what China's wrong. I'm like, no. It's people when I can make all my money, I can make so much money from that market. That's where I'm going to focus my attentions. And I was talking to someone the other night, I said, that's the thing. Everyone went, but yeah, instead of making 20 million, I can make 100 million. And exactly, and it's such an insanely strong market. That's why even Hollywood, will adjust stuff and everything. Because, for example, a couple of years ago, Dante Lam did a movie, the Operation Red Sea movie. That movie did about $500 million US in China. And people talk as if it was a flop. Because at the time, Wolf Warrior 2 came out and conquered the world. And it's that same thing. You never know And like we said, like, Story of Ricky Easton, some of these movies that we all love didn't cause a ripple here. Other movies that we hate, that's the movie people are like, no, but that's the movie you got to love.
I'd heard a story that you'll know much better than me, just because you mentioned Wolf Warrior there, that Wu Jing was supposed to make a Wolf Warrior 3, but that had fallen foul slightly of certain censorship aspects, because they were having issue with the fact that it had one singular, very central hero at a time when they were trying to promote more of a...
I'm not sure, because they are talking about it still. Yeah. It's... I mean, the funny thing is, okay, with Wolf Warrior 1, Wu Jing made Wolf Warrior 1, and it sat on the shelf for about a year and a half to 2 years.
Mm.
And while we were prepping Pound of Flesh, Wu Jing and his manager at the time reached out to us and was like, we hear Van Damme's making this movie. Wu Jing would like to work with Van Damme. Wu Jing would like a role. And the role that Brahim Chad plays of Nardo was the role Wu Jing wanted, like this. And if, of course, Wu Jing had taken it, would have expanded it. But the funny thing is, Wu Jing came to the meeting and kind of came across a little bit cocky to Ernie and everyone. And they were like, nah, he's not right for it.
Mm.
While we were shooting Pound of Flesh, Wolf Warrior got released and made like 100 million US. And the funny thing is, like, when we were doing Abduction, all the producers from China, when they met Ernie, were like, you're the guy who turned down Wu Jing. And it's that same thing, Wu Jing is a very, like, Wu Jing, even when he wasn't successful, kind of like when Donnie had his rough times,
mm-hmm.
was super like, no, this is the path I'm going to follow. When we did True Legend, originally it was meant to be Juma Jerk as the hero, Wu Jing as the Andy On role. And Wu Jing came to the meeting and was like so excited. They went, no, I refuse to work with Juma Jerk.
Wow.
He's like, we're like, but it'd be like real life. You're from the same school and you hate each other. And he was like, nope, I just can't work with Juma Jerk. And you go, oh, okay. And it's that weird thing. So, like, it's kind of thing. And, like, Wu Jing is a national treasure now in China. I mean, the Thingy Earth movies have both made so much money.
Mm-hmm.
He must have got given so much money to do the Meg 2, because he turned down the Fast and Furious movies. He turned down so much stuff because he basically said, when did you make the first Fast and Furious movie? Oh, 2001. I was an actor back then. Why didn't you call me for the first movie? But you're calling me now. Is it because I'm the greatest actor of all time? No. It's because you want my China market. So I want X amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure for the Meg, he's probably got half of China. He's probably got like half the China box office will be his, because I was like, he's doing the Meg too? Like, you're like,
seemed like a weird choice.
When we did the Mummy 3, he has that very small cameo at the beginning as an assassin. And he was like this very quiet little kid on set. Like, I was on set and I get a call on the walkie-talkie and they're like, oh, we're having a problem with Wu Jing at the costume department. I'm like, what do you mean? They go, she's very upset. And I was like, what do you mean she? And I go there and Wu Jing is just sitting there quietly. And there's a stunt girl called Wu Jie, and they're trying to put this thing in, and she's going, no. It's not me. Like, that's Wu Jing. But he'd come in, no entourage, no thing. And they were just like, oh, I guess he's just like stuntman number 4. Yeah, the American team. And I was like, no, this is Wu Jing. This is thing. And he was just very, very, and I think he was kind of like, I'm being disrespected on set, but I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because it's an American project.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of weird things. I mean, it's like, it's like Jackie, God bless. Jackie, New Police Story, Jackie was originally a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
Vanguard, Jackie was originally a cameo. But Jackie's like, I like being here. I will stay. I want my role to be bigger. So like Brahim, when he was hired for Vanguard, it was because originally Yang Yang was the hero. Jackie was the head of the organization, sends Yang Yang to his thing. Brahim and Yang Yang have the huge end fight. And then it just kept getting pushed back because it was like, oh, well, Jackie's now filming this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. And it's that weird thing of certain people they come in, they're like, okay, I'm gonna follow this, or I'm gonna take over, or I'm gonna do that. Wolf Warrior 3, I think, will happen. I think, like, I remember when they were putting together Wolf Warrior 2, I remember being sent the original script because they wanted to bring in another. Originally, they were going to bring in a big action star from the West to play the role that Frank Grillo got. And the original script, let's just say the patriotism was pumped up to the max.
Yeah. Sorry, it's still pretty high.
But the original ending of the movie was there are two opposing armies outside the hospital, and Wu Jing wraps himself in the Chinese flag and strides outside, and the power of the Chinese flag forces both armies to lower their guns, basically.
Wow.
And Wu Jing is standing there like that while all the refugees leave. And I was kind of like, this will work for China, but I think internationally there might be an issue. And yes, they're very patriotic. Just like Top Gun's patriotic, just like Rambo's patriotic. I mean, people seemingly forget that, like, you know, if we made a movie about, you know, like if we're making James Bond's a British spy. He's not about going, hey, maybe the CIA can help me. He's like, well, Felix, you're my friend, but you're not on the same level as me. Yeah, it's you know, people I think sometimes forget that these movies are made for certain markets. Like, I remember, you know, like sometimes once somebody was being ridiculously politically correct and claiming how, you know, you should never listen to the English dub and everything. I went, look, I said, I go into films because of the English dub. You know, like, and because of subtitles, because Hong Kong was a British colony, by law, everything had to be subtitled. So it made all those films much more instantly accessible because there were subtitles. Whereas a lot of Korean films, Thai films, everything didn't travel because the hassle of making subtitles and doing an English dub to maybe get an international sale was too much of an effort. And like with Korea, you could make so much money in Korea, you never had to release it outside. So that's why a lot of Korean actors people would claim had died or just gone back to Korea. I was like, yeah, they're still working. You know, it was just, they were like, well, I make money in Korea. Why am I going to, you know, I'm #1 in Korea. Why am I going to go, oh, I can get $20 for my big movie to sell it internationally. So it's always been that kind of weird thing. And I think it's like I think Wolf Warrior 3 will happen. That's all I can say at this moment.
I was literally just to close the loop on Wu Jing. I was literally just going through, and I'm sure you spotted just yesterday. I finally tracked down the wonderful Vengeance Pack release of SPL, which Wu Jing is incredible in. But
the funny thing of that is, and I think we mentioned it in the commentary, is originally SPL was meant to be the vehicle to reintroduce Wu Jing to the public as a modern day character, because everyone was like, Wu Jing's a traditional kung fu guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, originally it was like, no, this is going to be the movie that people go, oh, Donnie Yen was good, but Wu Jing was fantastic. And then Donnie came out of the movie with all the attention, you know. And then the same thing with the censorship. I had originally seen the Hong Kong version of SPL, where, you know, Donnie lives. And then suddenly I see the Chinese version, and Donnie gets pushed out the window. And I'm like, what? You're like, what? What's going on? You're like, because it's like, I mean, the Chinese version, Donnie wins, smokes a cigarette. Yeah, like da. Suddenly, the international version, you know, the Hong Kong version, Donnie's pushed out the window by Samo, and he kills the kids in the car. We're like, same thing. There's always been these alternate cuts of Hong Kong movies. You know, like
smart. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You cover yourself all.
Because, like, say with Cynthia Rothrock and Above the Law, Right Wrongs, countries like Malaysia or Singapore, you can't condone vigilantism. So the same thing for the Tiger Cage 2 ending. You've been you broke the law. Well, they killed my entire family and I had to take revenge. Yeah, but you must now pay the punishment.
Yeah.
You know, and as long as there's a shot of you in handcuffs, we're
sometimes a title card and everybody went to
jail. And that's the whole thing that you go, the same as Enter the Dragon. Why doesn't anyone take a 45 and bang, settle it? Mr. Han has a problem with guns. As long as you explain it, you're like, oh, this is Hong Kong before 1997. This is the alternate universe. I remember, like, if you watch, I think it's Naked Weapon or Naked Soldier with Samo, Or when someone's on an iPhone and it says like 1995 or something, no, like as long as it says it was before, like basically when the British were in charge of Hong Kong, you can have Godzilla running up and down Hong Kong because you go, oh, it's the British fault. They didn't take care of things. So there's always been this very thing. And then when Infernal Affairs came out, everyone was like, oh, they had to change it. It was like, they've been changing the ending on Hong Kong movies for years. Yeah, there's always been alternate versions. And I think that's the thing that people forget. And especially, like I said, like same thing with, I'd originally seen the international version where Cynthia and Yumbu live. And then at the end, Yumbu goes to prison. First time I saw the version where Cynthia Everett died, I was like, wait a minute. She's dead. Where did that come from? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. And like I said, but now, of course, you can get all the alternate versions. You can get the Brandon Bentley cuts where it's all there. We don't know which ending we're going to get cut. So no, I mean yes, there are politics in Chinese film. And there are times sometimes where you go, okay, we're going to rethink that. But it's in a lot of countries, there's always certain issues you can't address, and like, it's very easy to just go, China's bad for everything. And I think unfortunately that's the problem. People throw that out and don't go, well, hang on a minute, this is a film for the Chinese market. Like if you saw we've all seen the outcry just before the coronation. Like preemptive arrests of people who were going to do a protest.
Yeah,
and I was like, if that happened in Hong Kong or China, everyone would be like the evil empire. But I'm like, oh, we're arrested. It's like there's another country in Southeast Asia that's always done the thing of like, oh no, this is not to arrest you. This is for your own safety.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're worried that what you've said on the Fanatical Dragon podcast might upset someone, so we're going to put you in protective custody to save you, to protect you. And you're like, that's really, wait a minute, I'm in prison. But they're telling you, no, this is for your own good.
One of the things that in my chat with Arne he'd mentioned was that you guys are getting an opportunity to do commentaries for not just Hong Kong cinema, which is super exciting for me, particularly with some of the stuff that Eureka's doing. And you're going to be on the Golgo 13.
Yes.
Because do you still keep up with? I know you've always been a big fan of Japanese and Korean cinema, especially.
Yeah, I mean the funny thing is, like I have such a backlog of movies sometimes. Like I'm as I said, I came here because I'm a fan. I'm still a big fan. So like, I love it when we get to do stuff like this. Like I've been a huge fan of Golgo for years. I love the Sonny Chiba Golgo. I love the animation. There was somebody a couple of years ago talking about doing a new version of Golgo, and I was like all excited about that. So with this, it's great. Yeah, I'm probably more up to date with older Japanese cinema than more modern one, and same with Korean. There's so much coming out that like I'll suddenly turn around and be like, oh shit, there's like 30 Korean movies I need to see, or or Japanese films. Like, and with Japan especially, because there's so much that only comes out in Japan. There's so much like real V cinema that never breaks out. Like I was just with Rina Takeda, the High Kick Girl, and she's got a whole bunch of movies that have never come out anywhere outside of Japan. Like she's showing me all these clips. I'm like, what's this from? What's that from? And she's like, oh, that was just a TV show, or that was just this. But yeah, it was great to do Golgo, and like it's Kentakura. Yeah.
Do you know if they'll follow up with it with the Sonny Chiba one as well? Because that's a kind of crossover. A lot that's shot in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they do, because there's a couple of people like the Guilo band. One of the Guilo band guys in the Kowloon assignment is one of my neighbors. Like I see him like probably like once a week at least. So I'd love to do that because we can do a location report and everything. Sadly, we didn't have the budget or the visas to go to Iran and do a location report for Golgo 13. But
Arne said he did reach out to a bunch of, because I think he was in contact with quite a few musicians in Iran, and they helped him.
That's the thing. Like Arne is a man of many talents. Like Arne, like the funny thing is, people sometimes get very confused. They're like, "Oh, mate, you're doing a commentary with Brandon Bentley. Have you and Arne broken up?" And I'm like, "No, like we're not joined at the hip. Sometimes we do commentaries, we've done movies, we've done short films, we've done music videos, we've done stuff, but we also do other things. Like I can't hold a tune to save my life, like, which was proved when I was in China recently and last night, a karaoke night. But like, Arne's a very, very seriously diverse musician. Like he releases stuff under various names. He's he's the techno guy. Like I'm terrible with technology. Like I kid you not. Okay, I had to do this press conference in China, and the press conference was Thursday lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
And on Thursday morning, they said to me, "Oh, Mike, we need a couple of clips of you, of some of your stuff to show." And I was like, and of course, Mr. I shout at people for not having a showreel doesn't have a showreel himself. Because I'm always like, I don't think of myself really as an actor. So I'm like, and although the stupid thing is, I literally, the last month or two, had taken a whole bunch of clips from HD, put them on a hard drive, been like, I need to cut a reel at some point, like, or just always have them handy in case anyone needs them. But of course, they were on a portable hard drive that I didn't have with me. So I had to do like a really quick edit. And I was using this edit software. And for the first time ever, I was, oh my God, I can add pictures and text. And I was like, and I was really impressed with myself. And I was like, because I just used it for cut and paste editing. And so I was, wait a minute, I can add subtitles, I can add this, and I can insert a picture, and holy shit, like what you did earlier when you've popped up things like Yip Man 5 the Goal, I'm like, how did you do that? What wizardry is this? Like I'm from the age that I remember being at school and they said, as of next year, everybody will do computer studies. And me and my friends were, oh, what about us? And the teacher kind of went, you're fucked. So like,
you're still in the room with all the typewriters.
Yeah, like my first computer was a ZX81, which came with 8K of usable memory, that you could boost to 16. And then I got like a Commodore 64 and a Spectrum, and so I'm used to. I suppose I'm not trying to say people, but I'm used to editing like on film and being like, okay, VHS to VHS. So that's one of the reasons I do get annoyed with people now, because I go, okay, guys, you can edit on your phone, you can shoot stuff on your phone. Stop making the excuses that that you don't have access to all this stuff. I'm like, I'll ask you a question. So, how did you get into Hong Kong film, youngster? How did you get into all the?
Very similar story to yourself. I mean, I think I think you've not got many years on me, maybe 4 or 5, but. So coming up, it was initially just Bruce Lee movies on TV, Enter the Dragon on a Sunday afternoon, then the sort of semi-official VHS releases at a time when it was still rental stores. So kind of that's certainly my first exposure to Jackie Chan. But the big, massive gateway for me was the Made in Hong Kong VHS label, Jason O'Kane's.
No, I think that's the thing. I mean, it's funny that like I said, like, I remember there were certain people who were like, "Oh, like you're not ready to see this movie. You didn't get to see this on the big screen." I was like, I was 5 years old. Like I remember I was running for combat or something, and in 1993, it's the 20th anniversary of Bruce Lee's death, and everyone's going, "Oh, when Bruce Lee died, this blah 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 blah," and they asked me something about it, and I said, "Well, I was 5 years old when Bruce Lee died. I didn't know who he was." I said it was only later. And I got hate mail. I had people going, "Oh, you've been disrespectful." I was like, wouldn't it have been more disrespectful? I was like, 5 years old, I was at Mama Conga play school today. Bruce Lee is dead. I was like, when Elvis died, I was more upset that they'd cancelled the TV shows I wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think John Lennon was probably the first celebrity that I was like, oh, I'm aware of really that person and their impact. And of course, later on, I was like, oh shit, Elvis was cool and everything. But it's that weird thing, like we said, of just there's certain films and certain releases, like Made in Hong Kong. I still have a whole bunch. VHS are gone, the tapes are gone, but I still have the boxes.
One of the first ones that actually had liner notes. That was how. It's so hard for people to understand how, like you said earlier on, it was so difficult to get.
No, exactly. And like
liner notes is one of the few places.
My first Hong Kong, that was the thing. Getting here and literally being like, being like, oh, so. what can you tell me about, Yu Ping? And people are like, he's a fight choreographer. I'm like, well, where's his bio? Where's this? What do you mean? And the same thing, like, there's, actors and directors today that I'll be chatting to and they'll mention stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, you worked on this or you did that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, and nobody knows and things. And it's like, it's everything. Like, I just did the commentary for Stone Cold with the Brian Bosworth movie with Arne. And I woke up this morning and somebody had gone, Brian Bosworth was going to be in, like, Austin Powers? I was like, yeah, he was originally going to be one of the bad guys. And they were like, 100. I was going, but it was that same thing. I only know because I still had, like, a pre-release promo for it from Variety. I've got old issues of Variety where you're James Cameron's Spider-Man, Johnny Mnemonic starring Johnny Depp, Val Kilmer, Jane March, everything, and credits are not contractual, and you go, there's stuff like that where just an alternate universe, somebody did that, oh, that was actually going to be this, that was going to be that. So, but let's get back onto the track. So, so with Arne, Arne had reached out to some musicians he knew in Iran. I think one of his friends is Iranian and had, like, grown up there. And it's interesting because it's such a, like, sometimes we'll talk about how a film is a time capsule.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds really weird, but Golgo 13 is like a time capsule into an alternate universe because it's an Iran that doesn't correlate with any idea of Iran that you have in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, I think 2 people wear hijabs, but they're wearing the fashionable versions.
Mm-hmm.
They're not wearing the full burqa. They're wearing a nice hijab that you might wear to a party. And there's people in mini skirts, and there's, it's got this kind of like weird kind of like Eastern Europe, like kind of like Turkey kind of feel, like, lots of cafes and boulevards, and it looks like a really cool place. And it's that same thing. You go, and suddenly it changed. Mm-hmm. And you go, the fact that, there you go, that it's like a Japanese movie that you know, it's like, I bring up far too often on commentaries, I talk about how, like, say, Killer's Romance. Killer's Romance, it's told of time, you said, shot in England, 1, shot in London, 2, shot in Croydon, 3, shot in my own fucking street the week after I left for Hong Kong. I watch it and I'm like, wait a minute, that's my house. I see, Joey Wong's character lives in the road. Like, if I came out of my house, turned right, walked 4 houses and turned right again, I'm at Joey Wong's house, basically. It's like, and Joey Wong and Carmen Lee are at Croydon College, and I'm like, geez. And all my friends were like, see, if you'd waited a week, you could have just gone, And then the same thing in The Woman Is Small. Kirk Wong, the director of Crime Story, me and him went to the same college. We both went to Croydon College. And it's that weird thing of just the world being small. But so, like, completely off track, but going back to that, it's like, we got to do Golgo 13, which was really cool, because the same thing, I love cinema, like, without sounding pretentious. Like, that's how we met. We were just like, somebody was like, oh, you guys should meet because, like, you're in the movies and he's in the movies. And we met on the set of a bizarre short film that was never released. Well, I'm running a strip club and playing twin brothers. It's Big Mike's Comic Strip Club. And it's, I have strippers dressed as superheroes. And
I can work.
I first met Arne when I met the infamous Joe Fiorello. But so Arne's got his stuff. Like, Arne's an artist. Like, Arne paints and does stuff, and, like, it's very funny because sometimes even we'll be like, wow, you can do that? I didn't know you could do that. It's like, I've done commentaries with Brandon, and with that, the funny thing was, Kino Lorber announced they were doing Hard Target, and somebody went, oh, they should get Mike Leeder or Brandon Bentley to do a commentary. Both of us were like, yeah, we'd do it. And then, like, about 2 days later, I got an email from Kino Lorber going, hi, we're Kino Lorber. Would you and Brandon Bentley do this commentary? And we're like,
that's cool. Okay. That means they're paying attention.
Yeah, and we did our first transatlantic audio commentary which took some doing because you got to make sure we're both watching. There's no lag and everything, and it was mad, but we got it done. And like Brandon, same thing. Brandon is a fucking genius. Like same thing. He's super editor, super like he's done short films. He's done all these different. I mean, there's cuts of movies that are coming out that I'm like, holy shit! And the Arrow release, I'm so fucking looking forward to that.
I can bring that up too.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys have done The Big Boss together, haven't you?
No, we did Game of Death. We did Game of Death because I had done commentaries for the Shout Factory one, which I apologize to him for because the audio on them was terrible.
It's fine. If you listen on headphones, it's totally fine. It just sounds that you're a little bit quiet, but it's totally fine.
I was recording them at 2:00 in the morning in Indonesia while I was shooting the Raid 2. Because it was one of the things like, oh, we've changed the date. We need the commentaries now. And I was like, but I'm doing like 16-hour days. It was like, I did them. And the same thing, like from Indonesia, and part of me was laughing because I was like, I'm in Indonesia doing the commentaries with these. This is fucking cool. Yeah. And
so they ended up on the Criterion set as well, didn't they?
Yeah, which I'm very sad about. Criterion didn't even tell me because I'd have redone them for free. Yeah, I'd have been like, I'd have been like, let me do that. It says one of the reasons I did the commentary for Legacy of Rage. I was so embarrassed by the audio quality of the commentaries I'd done for Shout Factory that Ronnie was in town. I was like, Ronnie, let's do the commentary for Legacy of Rage. And I just sent it to Shout Factory as a gift. I was like, here you go. I felt really sorry about the quality. They were like, holy shit, this is excellent. And I said, like, so Criterion, I was really impressed by what was on there. And then Arrow, I was like, holy shit, I know Arrow's got some good stuff, but Arrow blew us away with the original announcement. And then each announcement
just kept topping the last one.
And the funny thing is, each time I'm like messaging Brandon going, you little shit, you didn't tell me about this. You're like, and we were laughing because we all at times sign NDAs about stuff. And it's like, you're going, I want to tell you this, but I can't. And, so yeah, I did Game of Death, which is like a personal favorite. Yeah, it's Watson. I love that movie. Yeah, like I think me and Brandon, I think people like our commentary. We discuss the madness of it, from a practical point of view, like, okay, we've got this much footage we're going to try and make a movie out of, because
which they contractually had to. We spoke about earlier. They'd already pre-sold it to Japan.
Yeah, and the thing is, it was that same thing. They were. I to this day, I wonder how much footage they were actually given that they could use, because sadly, Golden Harvest back in the day was so disorganized. Stuff got put to one side, and forgotten about. Like I said, that's how the original lost Game of Death footage was found. It wasn't hiding in some archive. It was on Betacam tapes, and it was listed as unused Bruce Lee footage. And then they found even more when they were doing the restorations this time. So even I don't know exactly what's on there. I'm like so thinking, like, people are like, oh man, I was like, no, I'm genuinely excited the same way. Like when you did say the interview for Brotherhood of the Wolf, I was like, I've already got the Shout Factory version, but I think I've got to buy this version there because it's got these other extras. And the same thing, I'm a fan. I'm not like, I would buy these movies even if I didn't work on them. That's the thing that, like, without saying, like, I kind of look at it from the outside and go, I'm still a fan. Like, because I still get excited about it. I don't ever want to be that, I load it up, Game of Death, whatever. I'm like, because there's some movies I've turned down because I've gone, I don't know enough about that movie, or I don't think it's the right movie to talk about, I mean, it was nice when we did Split Second. It was fun because I love that movie. There you go. I got to see that in the cinema. And same thing. That's a movie that made so much money. The company went, we don't have to do anything else. So, like, same as there was going to be a Split Second 2 set in the Channel Tunnel.
I
love that. I still to this day love Kim Cattrall and Ricky Howard, who briefly appears in it. And it's that something like, I love getting to revisit these movies. It's like I just did me and Brandon did Hate, for Kino Lorber.
Mm.
And the first review,
Burt Reynolds Heat.
Yeah. And when they first told us, we were like, hell yeah, Heat, Michael Mann, this is awesome. And I was like, I can tell my Michael Mann stories from Black Hat. And then like, no, the Burt Reynolds Heat. And I was like, oh shit. And I watched it, was like, well, this is not the film I remember. And then like we did a commentary, and last week a review came out of it that was like awesome. It was like, yeah, this commentary is better than the movie. And I was going about stuff because we talk about just how big a star Burt Reynolds was. You know, and it's that thing of, if you're a certain age, you don't really know that between like 1974 and 1984 and 84, there was that 10-year period where Burt was God.
Yeah.
You know, and it just changed overnight. Like, and you go, that's how weird it is. Like, it's like when Van Damme kind of like had that one where he came in and put on the crowns of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone and tried them out for size, and then the market changed again. You know, and it's that time you go, like now with all the streaming services, it's kind of like the video days of the 80s, because now there's all these outlets again. And there's, you know, there's so much stuff that now you can get access to. But so I think like Stone Cold, Split Second, I love those movies. Getting to revisit them is awesome. There's, you know, I mean, and the funny thing, there's a whole bunch of movies that we've done commentaries for that haven't been announced or haven't come out yet. And like sometimes even us, we forget, well, like, when did that come out? When did we do this? You know, and
I'd be remiss if I didn't shout about this one, because I think by the time this should come out, not long after we post this, but you guys have done your first track for Third Window, and Third Window so deserved to be spoken about in the same height as Films in Eureka.
And that's the thing. I mean, like, I met Adam, maybe 20 years ago when he first started the label. And he's such a character in his own right, because he looks like he just walked off the set of Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner. Because he's got his like 1960s stylings and suits and everything. And he's just an awesome dude. And like, it's that same thing that, you know, you go like him and Terracotta, when they were releasing films, I think they should get more attention. And I think that's the thing that frustrates me sometimes, is that people seem to forget that piracy isn't actually cool. Your piracy does screw the labels. It does. You're not sticking it to the man. You're sticking it to the filmmakers and the companies and everything. And like when people go, "Oh, I just uploaded a full HD rip," and I'm like, "And you've just lost that company a shitload of money, so they won't do another release." You know, like as I love the internet, but sometimes I think because everything was free on the internet to begin with, people just associate it as everything should be free. You know, and like, I would admit, I bought pirate copies of films when there's no other way to get them. Like, the bizarre thing is, like, for the longest time, the only place to get a good letterboxed copy of Gene Kelly, The Three Musketeers, which is fucking awesome, was in China on pirate DVD. Like, the only release by Warner Brothers was on VHS, and it was full screen. But for some reason, every shop in China had the DVD, and it was beautifully letterbox print. And you know, you go, it's that thing, and it's like with Warner's has Penny Cab Driver and Big Bullet, and you know, there's Jeff Briggs at Warner who's trying to push some of those releases, but it's that thing where you go, if you don't support the initial releases, guys, there's not going to be more releases. You know, of course, the releases will get better. You know, like, but it's that same thing. You know, when Hong Kong Legends started, that was such a risk. You know, people forget that to go, we're going to release these movies in their original language, and we're going to spend money for widescreen. Yeah,
when people would complain about the black bars at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, I paid for this movie. I want my full screen. Like, and the same thing. And you explain that to people, and like, you go, it's amazing how far it's changed. Like, and it's the same way. There are some films that frustrate me because there's rights issue, or there's just no negative, like Hard Boiled.
Yeah,
and you go, one, Hard Boiled's a classic, but two, you go, it's only 30 years ago. This is not. And you go, it made a lot of money at the time. Didn't anyone think about keeping a negative? And you go, that's the problem, that stuff has vanished. And, like Michael Worth is doing the clones of Bruce Lee documentary, and they've been tracking down the rights and prints, and they could have done grey area releases, and they've tracked down rights and everything. And the problem is sometimes you'll contact people and they're going, yep, I have the rights, but I don't have any materials. But I now have a chain of communication where if you ever release it, you need to pay me money.
Yeah.
Whereas if you never contacted them, you could have maybe got away with it. But now there's a legal thing. And like Michael and everyone were like, no, we got to track these down.
And do it the right way.
License it, do it right. And that's what people forget. It's not like there's a vault with all these lost movies just sitting there for anyone to access. Sometimes you are tracking down, okay, there's a Korean version, or there's a Japanese Laserdisc, or there's a such and such. I remember back in the day, Hong Kong Legends, sending them all my Japanese Laserdiscs so they could get outtakes, like for Dragons Forever and The Protector and Wheels on Meals, and be like, the infamous, the Asian cut, The Protector, more violence, less nudity, and Jackie not swearing so much, and like, I love James Glickenhaus's cut. It's because Jackie going, give me the fucking keys is just awesome, But like, I always hope I go, that movie, as much as Jackie hates it, one, it got a good release, and two, if he hadn't made it, we wouldn't have got Police Story, And it's that same thing that you go, sometimes it's that weird thing. You go, whoa, the success of that release allowed this. Like SPL sat on the shelf for a year and a half. We don't think it's good enough to release. Yeah. There's not going to be a market for it. And you go, all it takes is one person to go, boom. And suddenly, holy shit, like, it's like, okay, Jackie and Samo, they love the Sound of Music. That's like, they're like, oh, my Sound of Music, fucking great movie. And I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, yeah, that movie's so fantastic. And Samo's version, one of the reasons it's so good is because it's a long movie, they could spend more time in the cinema where it was air conditioned. And back in the day, you could buy a ticket and stay for the whole day.
Yeah.
You could stay for every screening. Because especially if you look like Samo, nobody would try and throw you out. But like, that and it's that same thing. And I think that's something where people get that now. Amazon Japan, Amazon Germany, you can get access with films. People forget how hard it used to be.
Yeah.
Where the same thing. That you're playing the same thing. You kind of go the same thing where you'd be like, I'm going to have to join that video shop because they have Shogun Assassin. They have this movie that, and you're like, they don't have anything else I haven't seen, but they've got that. And like, I just got sent a whole lot of stuff from England because like I was clearing out my house in England, and I got like stuff, and I'm like, holy shit, like there's something video club cards and stuff like that. God, like people forget how easy it is. It's like with music and music videos. Like I'm a huge Queen fan, and like you try to tell people Queen Princes of the Universe, that was like, I had it on VHS because they'd shown it once on BBC TV, or they were doing something. It was like, if you called in and the right enough people voted, they'd play it. And me and my friend were calling like, Queen Prince of the Universe, Queen Prince of the Universe. And I had it like a really grainy VHS. And I'm like, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. But you try to tell people like, no, that music video was, the lost music video because that single wasn't released in England. And the same thing. You go, all that stuff that now, like all those Japanese commercials with George Lucas and George Clooney that they hate because back in the old days, it's for Japan only.
And no one will ever see it. Yeah.
There is a director in China. There was a director in China. I won't mention his name, but he was a genius because he would call people in England and America and go, "Hey, could you tape, Ant and Dec's Saturday Takeaway, including all the commercials, and send me the whole night of stuff?" And he would copy the commercials. So he'd do like the Hovis ads, but for China. He'd do that. And I was like, he's a genius because he'd be going, "Okay, we've got this idea. There's going to be this guy, and a girl's going to come knock on his door, and he's got Pocari Sweat, and she needs." And you'd be like, "What? This is the coffee ad." But all of that stuff, and you go, you know, like there's stuff that I did that I wish I could find. Like there's, like I'm trying to find. There's a thing me and Ruben Langdon did with Samo. That's like the something of the laughing dog, and we have and two Japanese guys are in it, and one of them decides he's going to impersonate John Travolta. One of them decides to impersonate Sammo Hung. So the Travolta guy goes to America to study Pulp Fiction dancing, and then does the Pulp Fiction dance as John Travolta for John Travolta. And this other guy comes to Hong Kong, and we train him in kung fu so he can do a kung fu demonstration for Sammo. And like we got Yun Bu to be in it and everything, and it's just so much fun. But it was like 100 Yun Bu and Sammo, like because it's for Japan only. Like like Sammo's wearing the Lucky Stars wig. Yeah, like they were like, we want someone to wear the Lucky Stars wig. And I was like, I don't think he'll do that. And he was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's for Japan. And like I did 3 commercials for Suntory. And if I could, I would work for Suntory for the rest of my life. I shot 1 commercial with Chang Chen, 1 with Fan Bingbing, and actually we shot 2 with Sammo. And I think they were only for the Japan, maybe for Japan and China, but we've got Sammo fighting. Sammo's running a in his commercial. He's running a detective agency from a fishing village in Hong Kong, looking exactly like he did in the Lucky Stars. And then Ken Lo and his brother, who did the car hit and pantyhose, not Sammo, come and attack him, and he's fighting them and drinking Suntory and everything. And it's like, and the same thing. I was like, this is awesome. You're like I've got pictures now of me and Sammo, and he's wearing the wig. Yeah, he's being all My Lucky Stars, and you go, and I was like trying to get. I was like, where's my copies of them? And so they're like, oh, we only showed them for a while. And you go, I'm sure someone's got them, and it's like now you can go to YouTube and find all the outtakes and everything. But people forget how you'd hear like, there's a deleted scene. There's like remember when that was a special feature? Like there's a trailer. Like there's 1 deleted scene or an extended scene, and you'd be like, holy shit! But now you go, there's like entire discs of deleted material and alternate cuts, like even say The Protector, when we were able to do, here's the original version, here's the Asian version, know, and you go, like as a fan myself, I'm like, that's awesome, and that same thing when you go, here's all the alternate cuts, but you go, it's tracking down those, because sometimes it's like, well, no, this cut was specifically for that territory, and some companies will go, well, yeah, but you got to pay now additional rights. Like when people complain that, say, Spectrum in France, why aren't the movies English subtitled? Well, because Spectrum is licensing the French rights. If they put English subtitles on them,
it becomes an international release.
Yeah,
100 times the price.
Yeah. And I remember producing a movie with Mark Strange, and the first release was in Germany, and the director goes to me, oh, and we gave them the English audio too. And I was like, no, you idiots. And the day it came out, I was shooting something in China, and I went on the Pirate Bay that night to have a look. And there it was. There was the movie, English audio. And I was like, 4 months before any official English language release. Yeah. And people forget that takes a big hit off your thing. That's why now you're going to try and do simultaneous releases, and you're going to be like, okay, because once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
That's why when you have that stupid thing, like when someone uploads Wolverine, or and you're going, how did that person not get killed by Marvel? Like, or you go, and it's that terrible thing that sometimes you go, yeah, it's great, but that's not right. Like it's like Jackie. Jackie has stuff from his movies that nobody sees. Jackie's got his test footage from Fireman's Story and all this stuff. And Jackie had a guy, Xavier Lee, following him for like 20 years, shooting interviews with everybody in Jackie's family, everybody in Jackie's company, every person he worked with. I have no idea where any of that footage is.
You shot, when you were doing Fearless, you shot 3 documentaries at the time.
Yeah, we shot 3 entire documentaries that were never released. They only used part of it in promo for China. I knew one of them wasn't going to be released because Jet Li turned up to shoot an interview and he'd shaved half his face. Like, he literally turned up and, like, I was like, what the? I was like,
so that he could do just really side
he
on?
had to shoot the whole interview. Because this side, he was unshaven. But, like, same thing, like, Fearless. The original ending of Fearless was a huge tournament. Like, it was 12 fighters. So, like, if you watch Fearless, there's two guys who follow Jet Li's character pretty much once he comes back from the mountains. One's like a skinny guy, and one's a really bulky guy.
Mm.
The skinny guy was a Wushu champion. The bulky guy was a Sander, Chinese kickboxing champion. And they got signed, and then all those fights got cut. Because originally it was, okay, Jet fights, then his students fight, then his student fights you beat his student, then he fights you. You know, I spent 5.5 months doing casting. All the people who were used, I suggested on the first day. Yeah, I was like, oh, Western Sword guy, Anthony DeLongis. You know, but Anthony, same thing. Anthony was originally meant to be, he fights, he loses a sword, he gets out his whip. Jet changed his mind. You know, JC Lawyer, the boxer, he gets knocked down, he pulls out knuckle dusters. God. You know, and you go, you know, there's sometimes that thing we just go, things change. Like, someone adjusts it, someone takes a bit out, or the idea changes. Like, I said, like, New Police Story was originally Jackie just as the drunk mentor to Nicholas Jer's character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then Jackie was like, no, I really like this, we're going to keep going. Other movies change. Twins Effect was originally going to be Jeff Speakman. Yeah, like, Jeff Speakman was going to come to Hong Kong and be the Western vampire hunter. You know, but it didn't happen. You know, and you go, sometimes there's stuff and you go, you know, like, sometimes you'll find stuff and just go, holy shit. Like, I mentioned it a couple of times when we're talking about vampire movies and stuff. Demon Hunters, you know, because one, I want to see that footage. Like, two, I mean, it's Jack Scanner, it's Point Man, you know, and it's Yunhua as Lam Ching Ying. And Yunhua couldn't speak English then and can't speak English now. So, like, I was like, how did he get hired to be the English version? You know, well, you know, because when we hired him for Australia, he was like, but mate, I don't speak English. I was like, yeah, I know. But he was like, no, I really don't speak English. And I was like, yeah, they want a character, they like your acting, they like the thing. But you go, there's one thing, there's a whole bunch of movies Golden Harvest never released. Like, okay, what was Keanu Reeves' first interaction with Hong Kong cinema? Dream to Believe, a movie where Olivia D'Abo is a gymnastics champion with a troubled past, and Keanu Reeves is the goofy guy who loves her. And most of Olivia D'Abo's stuff is Dee Dee, who used to be Jet Li's double from Yu Ping's team, in a leotard and wig, doubling Olivia D'Abo, because it was produced by Golden Harvest. You know, it was like one of Golden Harvest international movies that they kind of like snuck out. It's called Dream to Believe, aka Flying. Mm-hmm. But it's like one of those weird things where you go, you know, there's certain projects that pop up. Like, the other day, I finally watched Cannibal Run 3 and understood why it's never been discussed and it's so bad. Mm-hmm. It's like, let's make a Cannibal Run movie with none of the celebrities of the same level and none of the fun. But you go, there's all these movies that people forget about or that slipped through, and it's like like when we were doing Man of Tai Chi, not Man of Tai, Man with the Iron Fist with RZA. Mm-hmm. RZA, when he got to Hong Kong, was kind of taken back by the fact that there wasn't, you know, shops,
museums and statues. Yeah.
You know, and he was like, yeah, mate. So one day he had a list of movies he wanted, and somebody goes, oh, we're going to send a PA to go and buy them. And I was like, well, if you can you buy 2 copies? Because I'll have them. And then, like, 4 days later, PA was like, I couldn't get any of them. And I pull out my bag, you know, like, DVDs that I've ripped from my Laserdiscs or my VHS, because I was like, these movies aren't available. You know, like, they're lost. Like, there used to be a distributor called Ocean Shores. Mm-hmm. Ocean Shores, a lot of companies, when they went bankrupt, Ocean Shores would be like, well, I was the distributor, I'll now acquire the rights. When Ocean Shores closed, a lot of those masters disappeared. Yeah. And you go, That's the frustrating thing. Like, film preservation in Hong Kong didn't exist for a long time. Like, there used to be a magazine called Cinemart about Chinese film, and Eastern Heroes, everyone used to steal images and pages from it, and because it was the source of a lot of stuff. The publisher of that was a guy called Alpha Lau Hin Kwan. And for years I was like, we should do an English language version of Cinemart. Let's do bilingual. Let's do some English language pages. No, Mike, I don't want to do it. I'm like, oh, no. Then he was like, okay, I'm closing the magazine. Mike, I want to sell my archive. Because he'd been running the magazine for like 30 years. He had so much stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, is everything listed? No. But then how can I get you a price? I can't just go, got a lot of Jackie Chan pictures. Like, no. And I was like, how about this? You give me all the pictures. I'll write a book about Hong Kong cinema and we'll share all the profits and everything. And he's like, yeah, good idea. One day, calls out, oh, mate, I cleared out my office. Well, one, he goes, if you want anything, it's in a skip. And what was happening that day? It was pouring down with rain. And yeah, I'm there climbing into a skip. Because to him it was like, what about it? Has no value. And you go, and that's the problem. Like Jumping Ash. I love that movie. I love the soundtrack and everything. And like, Hong Kong Film Archive has a pretty good print, but is so reluctant to do anything with it. Like, Hong Kong Film Archive is like a weird private collector that's like, oh, could you give me the masters of your podcast? I'll keep them secure for you. Oh, hey, I want to re-release them. Oh, no. They're in storage. You're like, yeah, but I gave them to you for safekeeping so I could always release them. Oh, yeah, but you don't want me to have to go into the vault. And because they're guys paid by the government, they're happy to not do anything. So, like, with Jumping Ash,
kind of profit.
Yeah, like with Jumping Ash, I ended up contacting them and they were being dicks. And I had to call Philip Chan, who co-wrote the movie, who had to call and go, I gave you a print. I gave it. And he's like, Mike is saying, can I take it? Can I digitize it? I will then give you back the original plus a digitized master. But they're like, no. And like Bill, the Guilo guy who I mentioned for Golgo, the Kowloon assignment, he gave a whole bunch of stuff from his films to Film Archive. They won't give it back to him. And so he was like, oh, can I just take it to the shop and get it scanned and I'll bring it back? No. And he's like, but it's not on display. So like, it's really frustrating. And it's sometimes things same way with Japan. They go, sometimes they're like, well, what? They don't realize sometimes they don't realize there's a market for it. Sometimes people don't understand that I can't come to you and go, oh, hey, I want to release a DVD collection of your podcasts. And I want to sell it to people. But just so you know, there's no market for it. So you can't charge me a high price. Because the amount of times people come to me and go, yeah, I'm setting up a label. And I want all these movies. But you got to tell them there's no market out there. And I go, well, if there's no market,
why are you doing it?
Why do you want to buy it? Like, they're not just going to give it to you out of the goodness of their heart. It's like, and it's frustrating because sometimes you are going, and like some movies, it's like you go, holy shit, like this movie, like there's a movie, what's it called? Slow Fade. It was an indie thriller, very artistic thriller, shot by a guy called Daniel Chan. Daniel Chan directed it. Josie Ho was in it. It was written by Francois Yip's husband, and it was released, made no money in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, it only ever got a VCD release. In Germany, there was a DVD release with a 90-minute documentary, the soundtrack CD, all of this stuff. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, in Hong Kong, it's a shitty VCD transfer. But like in the one country, for some reason, Germany was like, this is a really cool movie. And the guys had literally, someone was like, okay, whenever we're filming, someone pick up the DV camera and just shoot stuff. And they were like, well, we've got these DV tapes. It's like
Germany's an odd one. I mean, we briefly sort of flashed up that Vengeance Pack release before, and the Vengeance Pack. Anytime that I ever talk about them, I'm always amazed at how many people are confused / pissed off at the fact that they have to work a little bit to track those releases down, which I kind of like because we
No,
grew up.
and that's the thing, it's exactly that I would go, without sounding like, you weren't around in the day, you weren't there. But that's like, the problem is, a lot of people go to Hong Kong film the easy way.
Yeah.
They saw Hard Boiled and then went, what are the 10 best Hong Kong movies to watch? And they watched them all in a week. Yeah, and they're like, oh, these 10, I saw the 10 best, oh, this next movie doesn't add up to it. They never had that thing of looking at a poster and going, Andy Lau's in this. It could be a comedy, it could be a romantic drama, it could be an incredibly dark, heroic movie. Moment of romance. I remember dancing because it was raining.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, this movie is awesome. And that's when I fell in love with Wu Sin Lee, and I'm still in love with her. Much to her amusement. Yeah.
How did you first connect with Avengers Pact? How did you first? Because it's
Mirko contacted me, and Mirko is just he's an artist, and he has his way of doing things that is both good and bad. So it's that thing, sometimes when you go, look, I understand the art, but if you promote it better, like, he's awesome and it's great. But sometimes I'm like the other day he put out something about the Leaf Man. I was like, you didn't mention there's an interview with Godfrey or an audio commentary by Godfrey.
One of your best, I have to say.
Yeah, and he was like, what do you mean? I was going, mention that, because people might have a copy of Lethal Panther, but if they know, oh, there's an audio commentary by Godfrey or this, and sometimes that's the thing. So I love Mirko, and I love the thing, but yeah, I understand the frustrations of people like, well, the website's really hard to navigate, and and that's the problem now. A lot of people making the effort, so, without sounding like, you bunch of lazy Gen Xers or whatever the cool kids call them these days. Like, that's like the part of the thing of being a fan to me was that thing of tracking down a copy. Like, I've seen something. Like when No Retreat, No Surrender, I remember I'd rented a movie and the trailer was on it, and I called one of my friends, like, you have to come to my house now. I went, I've just seen this trailer. And he was like, what? And he was like, okay, I'm getting on my bike. And he rode over on his bicycle. And we probably watched that trailer 20 times before we saw whatever movie it was on, And it's that same thing. You go tracking down those movies and tracking down, oh, there's a Japanese edition, or there's something, or oh, if you get this version, it's got that. It's like sometimes people expect everything to be handed to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this morning I posted a thing where I said, like sometimes actors and people need to understand, if I call you for a casting and I call you again and again, I'm not doing it to fuck with you. It's because I think you're good and I'm trying to put you forward. But sometimes, same thing, casting decisions are made for certain reasons. You might not be right for this movie. You might be something like, say, okay, Scott Adkins for Donnie.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at Scott for Fearless as the British boxer, but we were like, and then he was doing Undisputed, a little movie called Undisputed 2 at the time. So like, wouldn't have worked. It meant 2, we talked about it. Then Chasing the Dragon, I suggested him because Scott really wanted Donnie, and Donnie was like, yeah, but the character's not a fighter. And if I don't fight him, it's a waste of Scott. And also people will be like, oh, you're trying to mess with Scott, like you're hiring him but not using him properly. And then for Big Brother, I suggested him, and Donnie was like, no, the role's not big enough.
It was the MMA fighter.
Yeah, it was a really cool role for Jess, but he was like, Scott's already at the next level. And then of course he did that little movie called Ip Man 4. And you go, sometimes it's just, no, I'm keeping you in mind for this. And sometimes it is that thing that people forget, that like, sometimes it's economic reasons, sometimes it's timing. There are projects where I have literally been like, whoever answers the phone first is going to get this job. And that's what people sometimes forget, that it's not the whole world is, it's not the whole world is waiting for you to acknowledge it. Like, sometimes, hey, I've got an idea. I suddenly want people for this role. Like Big Brother. I didn't know I was in Big Brother until the morning we started shooting the scene. I hired all the guys, and I was on set for rehearsals, and then the funny thing is they were filming at a film studio that's literally 5 minutes walk from my house. It's at the end of my road, and it's where they shot a lot of Kickboxer and everything, and and I'd said, I'll come by at lunchtime and hang out and everything. And like 7 o'clock in the morning, one of the ADs was like, "Hey, Big Mike, Donnie wants to know what time you're coming." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to come at lunchtime and everything." And he's like, "Oh." I was like, "Yeah, okay." Ring, ring. "Oh, Donnie says you need to come early." I was like, "Well, okay, maybe I can come at 11. You're like, "Oh, no, Donnie says you need to be here for the first shot." I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Well, because it's all about your character." I was like, "I'm not in the movie." No, you are. I'm like, "No, I'm not." And I'm having an argument with this poor AD. And Donnie had seen some rehearsal footage and seen me in the background shouting at people, big shouty Mike. I go, Mike could be like Dana White. But instead of messaging anyone, including me, that night, he was like, "Where's Big Mike on set?" And for Jess, God bless him, I arrive on set and I'm wearing my own sweatpants, a t-shirt that's too small for me, because of course, costume department doesn't have a costume my size lying around. And Jess is like, "Wait a minute, Mike, when did you're in the movie?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Have I been replaced by you like before shooting has even started?" And you go, sometimes it's just the good and bad thing of Hong Kong movies is anything can happen, which can be incredibly good and sometimes can be incredibly bad. It's like there's an Andy Lau movie coming out called I Did It My Way. I played 4 totally different villains in it because they kept changing ideas and reshooting. And I was like, "But no, hang on a minute, I've already been in it." "No, we want you to be," and I'd be like, no, but I've already. And I get there and then change my car. I'll be like, "But I've already done it." "No, it's a total reshoot." And I'd be like, "Okay." And I was like, "But surely if it's a total reshoot and the character has changed so much, maybe you could get someone else." And I'm like, "Oh no, we like you, just we've changed the character." But like the other day, one of my friends was doing the audio, the post ADR, sometimes you have to replace dialogue, the ADR, with Andy Lau. And the director was talking to my friend, and the director goes, "Oh, you're a friend of Big Mike's," and proceeds to show him all these clips of me. And my friend calls me and goes, "Mike, I didn't want to say anything to Jason, but I was like, did they not realize you're playing like 4 totally different characters?" I'm like, no, I'm not. I went, "We just reshot 4 times." But like, one of my characters has hair and a beard. One time I shot it and I'm completely bald. One time I've got a bit thing, and the last time we shot it, fingers crossed, I'm Fidel Castro. I've got a Fidel Castro beard, a hat on, and I'm suddenly a Cuban bad guy. Well, I look Cuban, but I sound like I'm from South Croydon. But it's like you sometimes never know what's gonna click, what's gonna think. So but it's exactly that thing. You go, sometimes when it's easy, it's too easy. Like I just looking at the background, like the John Wick movies, and you got, like, fucking hell, you got some good movies there, damn. But like that, if you'd said to someone, like when I first came to Hong Kong, if you'd said to someone, "Oh, just to let you know, within 10 years of you going to Hong Kong, Keanu Reeves is going to make an action movie. The guy from Bill and Ted is going to make an action movie that's choreographed by Yuen Woo-ping. Oh, and at the same time, there's going to be a Chinese language kung fu movie that's going to win an Oscar. And then 20 years after that, Michelle Yeoh is going to have this incredible career resurgence and become a huge Hollywood star, busier than she was ever in Hong Kong." Oh, and by the way, Short Round from Indiana Jones 2 is going to come back. I'd be like, "Yeah, whatever, mate." So it's like I said, just it's crazy. It's such an insane situation, the way everything can happen. One movie could change everything. Who was the original fight choreographer for The Matrix? It wasn't Yuen Woo-ping. I will be dropping that because I found all my audition footage that I shot with the original choreographer. So I'm going to digitize it and put it all online. And you get to see like Salma Hayek trying out, and it's awesome. All these people auditioning for the Matrix movies.
At one point, it was going to be Will Smith as Neo and Sean Connery as Morpheus.
And it's that same thing that you go, there was meant to be a Jackie Chan movie with Sean Connery where Sean Connery was going to be Jackie Chan's dad. But, of course, Jackie is adopted, but it was Jackie is Jackie was raised by a British, Scottish, Hong Kong expat policeman, and then Jackie gets implicated in a murder and has to call his dad, Sean Connery, to come out of retirement to help him. And I was like, this is going to be awesome. The same way there was meant to be a movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Sean Connery, an Alexander the Great movie. And another movie called Almagado, which was going to be Jean-Claude Van Damme as this taxi driver in a post-apocalyptic New York. It's like all these movies that you go, what could have been? And same in casting choices, like with Once Upon a Time in China, Yuen Biao thought he was going to be he was pitched, this is the adventures of Leung Fu. Wong Fei-hung is a goof. Wong Fei-hung is not the hero. It's actually all about Leung Fu.
Yeah.
That's why Yuen Biao didn't return for part 2, because he was like, this is not the movie I agreed to do.
Well, yeah, it was his movie for the first one, wasn't it?
And you go, but it's just that same thing. Stuff changes. Think about it. If Shaw Brothers hadn't asked for too much money, Alexander Fusheng would have done Snake and the Eagle Shadow. But it was just, literally, Shaw Brothers asked for too much money. So they were kind of like, to spite Shaw Brothers, we'll just hire some unknown guy. And Laurie was like, please take this fucking guy. Like, take this guy, have him for $20. I don't care what you do with him.
Yeah.
And it's that same thing. You go, what could have been? And I think that's the thing. Like, you look back and you go, holy shit. Like, I just saw an interview with Hugh Jackman where he was talking about how he was offered, they approached him about playing James Bond. He was like, no, I don't do that. He goes, I'm doing the X-Men. He goes, James Bond's too soft. Like, you need to toughen it up a bit. And he goes, and then I saw it in a row. I'm like, oh. But that same thing, you go, what could have been? What, like the same way when you go, the movies that we all thought were going to be the big smash that were like, you think about if, say, the Big Brawl had broken Jackie then internationally, what could have happened?
All the things we wouldn't have got. Probably wouldn't have got Duncan
Michael. That's the thing. And you go, like, I remember talking to Jackie just before Rumble in the Bronx came out, and I was asking him, like, hey, like, now with Laserdisc and everything, they often put, like, deleted scenes. And he was like, why would I put deleted scenes? If I cut them, it's because they're shit. Like, if they're really good, they'd be in the movie. He's like, I don't want to show people the bad stuff. And I was kind of like, well, he's kind of got a point. Like, it's that weird thing of just going, what changed that could have been like, like with John Wick, like Mark Dacascos for John Wick 3 was originally going to be a really minor role.
Yeah, it was going to be his part was
going to play that role, but Henry Sard decided to do the Avengers movie instead.
I heard he tore his ACL, I think, as well. I
think there was a couple of things, but it was like, and I remember Mark had messaged me because Mark was in New York to do Shakespeare in the Park, because Mark's a huge Shakespeare thing, and he bumped into Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves, and then Keanu was more impressed that Mark was in the Shakespeare, and they started talking about Shakespeare, and then it was like, oh, hang on a minute, and then Mark was like, oh, I think I'm going to be in John Wick 3 as a small role. I was like, oh, cool. And so he was like, oh, I think I'm the main villain now. And the same thing, you think if Brotherhood of the Wolf had been given a push like Crouching Tiger. Like, if you look back at Crouching Tiger, the first trailers for Crouching Tiger are genius because there's no dialogue. It's just cool visuals. Half the audience went in not knowing it was a subtitle movie. Because the thing is, if you put it's a subtitle movie, half the people go, oh, I don't want to read a movie. If they don't know, you'll accept it. But it's like you go, that, or like if Crying Freeman had been given the push it should have, or Drive. Like Mark always jokes about that he was the action star who was an action star internationally, but in America he was the Iron Chef. They like when we did Ultimate Justice, we brought out his eldest son, and his eldest son was kind of like, wait a minute, my dad is not just my old dad who does kung fu in the background and I get embarrassed by him. My dad's an action hero because he got to see his dad hanging out of cars and fighting people and shooting people, and he was like, well, this is kind of cool. It's not what I'm expecting. So but I mean, God, I waffle. But
it's great. Just, like, honestly, it's absolutely great. There's a couple of things because we're getting We're getting very close to having to stop and restart, which is totally cool. We can,
Okay.
but very, very quickly before, 20 odd something years ago, I heard a glorious commentary that you did for Volcano High. And one of the coolest career resurgences of the last couple of years is the return of Jang Hyuk. He did the Swordsman
Jang Hyuk's awesome.
and did the Killer, and it's so cool seeing him back. And
that's the thing that you go, like, the funny thing is, I remember we did the commentary, and I went to Korea to interview the director and the main actress and everything, and the villain, what's his name? But like, and the director was like, you did a commentary? Please tell me it wasn't a serious commentary. Yeah, he was like, he's like, you can't take my movie seriously. He was like, the Korean commentary, I'm just talking shit about people. Yeah, he was like, oh, and that's the thing, you go, it's just some of those movies, you go, if they'd just been pushed. But yeah, Jang Hyuk, the same thing, you go, like Nick Chung. I remember when Nick Chung was going to be the new Stephen Chow. You know, and then suddenly he became the greatest living actor. Yeah, it's like suddenly, oh, hang on a minute, he could be a serious actor. You go, someone sometimes just seeing something in you that nobody else saw. You know, somebody go, wait a minute. No, like, I remember Mark saying that for Hawaii Five-0, the director was asking, would it be okay if you threw a punch? Would it, like, would you be comfortable doing this? Because the director had no real idea of who Mark was.
And what else he'd done, yeah.
Yeah, he was going like, would it be okay? Would you feel okay?
And sticking with the wuxia theme, because Donnie Yen just returned back to traditional kind of style wuxia with Sakura. How did Sakura do over there?
Okay, Sakura was very interesting because it was shot while China was still locked off for COVID. Mm-hmm. So the production kept stopping and starting, which I think was one of the problems. That at that point, that was what was so crazy with the thing of COVID in China was you could be shooting one person could test, production will close down for 3 weeks. Mm. You know, like we were at the same time we just started shooting the Nicholas Jan movie, Customs Frontline with Herman.
I was going to ask you about that as well, actually.
And okay, just to get Brahim Cham here as the villain. Okay, Brahim was in France. Brahim couldn't fly directly from France because France was red zoned. So I had to get Brahim to go to Belgium for 3 weeks. So he could have 3 weeks out of France before he even got on a plane to Hong Kong, and then do 3 weeks quarantine in Hong Kong.
And then come to mainland.
No, and then start shooting in Hong Kong. And then on the last day of his quarantine, I had to call and go, oh, one of the main actors got COVID, so there's going to be at least a 2-week wait. My brain was like, I'm going to kill you, mate. But, but no, with Sakura, it did, okay, I think the problem was because COVID was like, Sakura completed shooting in October 2022. It was released in January 2023. They had 2 months of post-production, which I think shows at times, unfortunately. Some of the CGI, some of the pacing is all over the place. Because at the time, China was still locked off. A lot of films, I think Wong Jing did a deal where he was like, look, let's send this straight to streaming. Mm-hmm. We'll get a huge chunk of money because cinemas kept being closed. They didn't know what was going to happen. So Sakura, Kenji, who was the action director, Kenji Tanigaki, Kenji shot Kowloon Walled City of Darkness, whatever they're calling it today, before he did Sakura. Kowloon Walled City ain't going to come out until at least the end of this year, beginning of next year, because they're still in post. They've been in post for like a year and a half. Yeah. So I think with Sakura to me feels like two or three movies condensed. It feels like one of them Taisen compilations, where they take like a series just because you're suddenly going, well, wait a minute, why is this character only in it for 10 seconds? Isn't he really important? Like, I love that opening with Choi Siu-min. Mm-hmm. And Donnie's original vision was this was going to be the Doctor Strange of the wuxia universe.
Yeah, it was the beginning of a series, really.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing because how does it? Donnie is a fucking genius. Donnie, I've known Donnie since I got to Hong Kong, and bizarrely, we did get along for a long time, and then we suddenly seemed to be okay. And he's really good. It's actually Donnie needs the right people around him including directors who can see his strengths and his weaknesses and know thing. If that's why you see Donnie in some movies, you go, holy shit, the dumb. Like Wilson yet brings out the very best in Donnie. I think some of the directors Donnie has worked with in Hong Kong and sometimes aren't as strong as they should be, and it doesn't. And I think with Sakura, the problem was that it got rushed in post production. Because
flashes, there are flashes of brilliance, and all the flashes of brilliance for me are the Kenji flashes. You see little beats that he did a lot in Rurouni Kenshin when he done the kind of choreography in Japan. That I don't know how best to describe it. It's like the running along the ground almost horizontally thing that you saw a lot.
Not exactly like that opening when you have a brief glimpse of Kenji sitting on a rooftop as a kind of beggar and everything. Yeah. And also part of the problem was because Sia Liu, the girl who suddenly is in the end fight fighting alongside Donnie, she's awesome. But basically, she became a huge superstar while we were shooting.
Current season of Sisters Who Make Waves, I think, isn't she?
But we were basically, while we were shooting the Herman Yale movie, where she blew me away. She's hardcore. She works hard, great attitude, takes her knocks. She became a huge star while we were filming that movie. So I think her role in Sakura, they were kind of like, well, we're going to kind of focus on her. Because you suddenly go, well, wait a minute. She just kind of pops up towards the ending and suddenly is suddenly Donnie's best friend. I think Grace Wong, who plays the villain, Grace Wong is the new Carry-On to me. And I even told her, I was like, you're a sexy, good-looking bad girl. And she was like, don't tell my husband that or he'll get angry with you. But I was like, you got this great, beautiful bad girl look. So I think that's what, to me, we didn't need to see Ray Loy turn up at the ending and not do anything. You could take out that, or just had Ray sitting on a mountaintop watching, hinting at what's to come. Instead of he suddenly turns up to just say, aha, I'm Fred. And I was heavily involved in everything that was going on and all your life. Movie's over. I was like, don't do that. At least do it as do it like a Marvel post-credit or a Fast and Furious where he just, during the credits, pops up I've been watching you.
Yeah.
But, so I feel like Sakura is a condensed version.
And but he couldn't have picked harder source material because Lewis Chow's novels are always virtually impossible to put into films. They work as series. If it had been
I think that's the thing. It's like without somebody to jump on, it's like Blade Runner. If you read the original Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, you go, it's an awesome book. But the fact they're able to take that and turn it into Blade Runner is incredible. Because all the stuff in the book, the mercerism and all this stuff, you go, how would you ever be able to make that work? But now you go with virtual reality and everything, you go, actually, now it would kind of work. It's like, say if you took, breaking news, the Johnny Depp movie. Breaking news now in this world with deep fakes and everything, you go, it will be the ultimate remake, because you go, ta-da, what's real, what's not. We're going to alter the news while we're filming it, I just saw some British series recently where it was about that. It was about deep faking in politics with a British thriller TV series, and basically you and me are doing this podcast, and your wife goes, "Dude, you're on TV being interviewed live." You're like, "No, I'm not. What?" And there you're on TV answering questions on a live show, and you're calling the BBC going, "No." They're like, "No, we're talking to him now." So I think that's the. So I think with Sakura, I think that one, the source material, you've got to dig through and chop a lot to make it work. And then two, I think post-production, they just rushed it. So I think the movie isn't the movie Donnie wanted it to be. I mean, Donnie really went behind it. I mean, Donnie was turning up at cinemas to promote it and everything. I mean, that's the thing, because I know his passion for it was it was going to be the Marvel universe of wuxia.
Yeah.
And I think it could have been. I think they could have just trusted him and gone okay, let's streamline it and set up for the sequels. But the way Marvel did, where is that just at the end of the first movie, we'll hint that there's more things to come. We'll hint that, if, say, the movie had ended and then Donnie's cleaning his sword and he looks up and there's Ray Loy. And you just go, what's going to happen? Coming soon, Sakura 2, But to put it all into one, it got lost. And everything.
But Kenji's work does shine, and
Kenji
he's
is
another dude
awesome.
who you've known for a long time.
God, I met Kenji when he was a junior ninja, and he's just awesome. I'm so happy to see his success, because I literally have seen him through blood, sweat, and tears. I remember during Legend of the Wolf, he got knocked the fuck out and woke up only speaking Japanese, had no idea who any of us were, how he was in Hong Kong. Like if you look at Kenji took some hardcore hits when he was a young stuntman. He more than paid his dues, and he's also the same thing. He's such a fan. Like me and him will still be like sending each other rare pictures with film. Like, I just found this picture of Bruce Lee and so on. Like, I found this picture of Jackie Chan in Japan doing this. You're like, it's ridiculous. Yeah, like, because I'm like, Kenji, you're like one of the top action directors in the world. He's like, yeah, but you look at this rare picture of Jackie Chan, and it's just it's so refreshing, But no, Kenji's awesome. Kenji, he's fucking
those 5 Rurouni Kenshin movies are for me so far his magnus opus. I don't know if I'd love to see him ascend to even higher heights, but those 5 movies are incredible.
No, I agree, because they gave him full control. Like his cut of G.I. Joe, oh my god,
his fight choreography, the stuff that all the kind of the previs for Snake Eyes was amazing.
Yeah,
but then completely ruined.
That's the thing that frustrates me when they bring in without such like. This is why my producer's hat goes on, because I go, right, you spent the money to bring this person in, and all the thing of getting visas and work permits and unions and everything. Gave him the time to do prep, gave him all the thing, and then just gutted it in post. Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, like, and that's the frustrating, because like you gave him the time to do it. It's not like he just turned up on set and had to shoot it, and you went, well, for winging it, it's not bad. And like, what's his name? The main actor from Snake Eyes. Oh God,
Henry Golding.
Yeah, Henry Golding worked his ass off. But the problem is, as soon as you bring Iko into the mix, everyone else vanishes once Iko starts moving. It's like Iko. I mean, it's that thing where you just go, as good as you can make Henry Golding look,
he's not going to be Iko.
Yeah, because not because Henry Golding's not good. Henry Golding put the work in, but Iko has lived and breathed martial arts from his childhood, and he gets choreography. He gets that thing. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is I often get from real martial artists is movie martial arts is a martial art in its own form. Like when we brought over Jess for Big Brother, I met Jess when I was casting Fearless. When Jess came in, and I asked him to audition to play a Savat fighter, who is and awesome. He then nearly came in on Ip Man 2. He was like in the running with Darren Shalavi. Then I tried to get him on Man of Tai Chi, and then finally on Big Brother. During that time, Jess had managed to start working on film. So Jess had done stunts, he'd done fights, he'd done a lot of acting. Even Jess would admit, when he got to Hong Kong, it was like, okay, I'm in fight school 101. Suddenly, everything I know has just been thrown out the window. Even Scott, when he did Ip Man 4, was like, holy shit, dude, it's back to school. Because it's like walking on set, and it's like, oh, okay, we need to do 4 backflips, jump, spinning kick, land in the splits, and then deliver a line of dialogue. Go. No warm-up, no... that's the thing. Once you get back in the Hong Kong groove, it's like, holy shit. It's like working with Donnie. Donnie will watch you do rehearsals with his stunt double. And then Donnie go, okay, and step in to start shooting. So you're going, wait a minute, I've just rehearsed it with the other guy. Can we do a rehearsal? And Donnie's like, no, we're going to go for it. So you're then going, okay, I'm going to adapt to Donnie.
And definitely not hit Donnie.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And it's like, you go, it can be very hard for people to think. It's like when we did True Legend, that was what was hard for Dominic Vandenberg. Like, Dominic is awesome. Dominic in real life could kill everybody in the world with a tissue. Dominic is an awesome guy. His real martial arts background, his real military background, everything is phenomenal. But Hong Kong choreography isn't for everyone. It's hard to adapt. It's like the same way, like when people go, "Oh, but I've got military background now." Yeah, but it's great that in real life you hold the gun like this, but we're paying this actor $1 million, so you know what?
You need to see your
Hold the
face.
gun like that. Laura, I want to see his face.
Yeah.
Look at Joe Louis. Joe Louis had the look, the physique, the skills. If you look at him and Chuck Norris, you go, Joe Louis is going to be the star.
Yeah.
But Joe Louis never came across on film as a martial artist. Like, I don't know if it was they never found the right choreography for him or this. Like, the other day I rewatched like Django Livs. I'm like, I watched Django Livs. I'm like, okay, Yuen Wah is the guy he follows in Hong Kong, and he follows him all the way through Hong Kong, and then he catches him, and they don't do anything. They don't even fight. Like, this makes no sense. Like, you go, all the elements were there, but they just didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to adapt to it and everything. And you go, that's the thing. Like say with Keanu. Keanu isn't a lifelong martial artist, but Keanu is like, I'll put in the effort, I'll put in the training, I'll work at it. And Keanu is his own biggest discipline. Yeah. Like when we were okay, he's basically got a fused neck and back. Like he broke them. That's why in Matrix 1 he's very
because he behind the scenes he's still wearing a neck brace.
Yeah. And yet he would still go to training with his neck brace on and do all the stuff and do all that. And I remember seeing him on Man of Tai Chi. There's just a bit where he does during the fight with Iko and Tiger, he kicks Tiger at one point. And he did the kick and he was like, I want to do it again and again. And I knew you could see it was hurting him, but he was like, no, I want to do it right. I want to do it right. Same thing, Man of Tai Chi, what we originally were going to do and what something got lost in the mix. Like the original ending of Man of Tai Chi, the finale with Iko and Tiger. Okay, the raid hadn't come out yet, but they'd heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do some kind of like juggling and get Gareth to kind of like show us some footage for Keanu to see surreptitiously. Yeah. And the original idea was that basically, Tiger comes up to do the fight and Iko walks over to him and is like, look, I have nothing personal against you, but at this level of fighting, one of us could die.
Mm-hmm.
They're having their fight, the police arrive, freeze. And Iko's like, I hope we get the chance to finish the fight another day, sits down and gets out a book and is like, just waiting for the police to arrest him. And then when we shot the movie, it kind of got adjusted. Like we shot so much more action for Man of Tai Chi. Mm-hmm. Every fight is longer. Every fight is like, I just think something, Man of Tai Chi, nobody got behind it the right way.
I still love that movie though.
And whoever styled Tiger for the movie should have been shot. Because they didn't style him right, and it's really frustrating because Tiger's awesome. He's a really nice guy. And I give Keanu so much respect because Keanu took a year of his life. I went, okay, I'm going to dedicate it to Man of Tai Chi and do this. And you go, okay, it's not like Tiger is Donnie Yen. So it's not like, I'm making a film in China with the biggest name in China. Like when we were doing Man of Tai Chi, the casting thing, people go, oh, but Mike, is Tiger famous in America? I'm like, no. Then how is he in this movie? I'm like, well, because Keanu's his friend, and Keanu had said, we'll do a movie together.
Yeah, because they worked a lot, or he was a lot behind the scenes on the first Matrix, and then on camera for Matrix 2.
Yeah.
Like so the Chateau fights.
It's that thing where you go, Keanu is very much, it's like RZA. Like, I have so much respect for RZA. Like, when we did Man with the Iron Fist, RZA, something worked his ass. Same thing, Man with the Iron Fist, what we shot and what got to the screen, slightly different. When we began shooting Man with the Iron Fist, Russell Crowe was the villain. When Russell Crowe arrived, he was no longer the villain. But we'd shot all the stuff where Russell Crowe's stunt double was being a villain and doing all this stuff. But then kind of universal rights, Russell Crowe, whatever he wants. And we shot tons of action that wasn't used because I think someone was like, oh no, let's push the bloody aspect and everything. And And it's a pity because RZA is awesome. I have so much. I caught up with him March. he was the first, him and the Wu-Tang Clan did the first concert in Hong Kong after all the COVID restrictions had been lifted. And he messaged me, was like, Big Mike, I'm coming back to Hong Kong. We need to meet. And I was like, sure, whenever. I was like, and then he was like, okay, I'm here. I'm doing rehearsals. We're doing a concert on Sunday. Do you want to come? Let's meet. And he's got projects he wants to do and everything. And something, he put his money where his mouth is. He didn't just show up, for the paycheck. He came in and he worked his ass off. He did the prep. He did the thing. And it's like, I felt that kind of Universal went, oh, let's push it at the last minute as a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of it's RZA, it's RZA's movie. And it's frustrating because Man of Tai Chi and Man of the Iron Fist, what was originally going to be there was like with Fearless. Fearless, I got to work about 18 months on Fearless. Like, I did all the pre-production, all the production, all the post-production into the release. And most of what we shot ended up on screen. Like, once you count the director's cut and everything, which I think, as much as it's great to see Michelle, the director's cut is a bummer. Hoya Jed dies and Wushu doesn't get accepted into the Olympics, and then Michelle just walks off into the sunset. I was like, bit of a bummer. But it's like, but something, I got to work with Ronnie and Yu Wu-Ping and Jet, and like I got to grow my hair and look like an idiot, and and just something, I learned so much on that movie. I made friendships that I've still got to this day, and with that movie, I can see everything we worked at delivered. And sometimes we're like same thing with The Mummy 3. When we did The Mummy 3, we shot a better movie than got released in the cinema. And it's frustrating because you're like, wait a minute, but we shot all this really good stuff. And sometimes that's the hard thing on a movie, because you're going, I'm having a really good time. This may not be a good movie. Like,
in both those cases, they're both Universal, aren't they? Do you think?
No, I don't know. I think it's just sometimes it's like when you look now at Hard Target and the fact that, which bizarrely was Universal too. Was it Universal Paramount? Yeah, but like there were people going, no, we want to check this. Whoa, we need to have John Woo needs to be told that there is a director on standby, ready to replace him at a moment's notice.
Who's Sam Raimi?
Yeah, and Sam Raimi is fighting for John Woo. But they're going, okay, but Sam, you literally have to be on standby for us to go, yeah, fuck John Woo, Sam, you're taking over.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened to Sam on Crime Wave. Where, same thing, they'd gutted his thing. Oh, you can't cast Bruce Campbell, can't cast your friend. Same as when Kevin Smith did Mallrats. Oh, well, you can't just, it's not about making a movie with your friends. Well, that's kind of what my first movie was, So it's that weird thing of sometimes. And it's that same thing like where sometimes you go, how, like we said, how one movie or one project can change the path or the thing of like, you suddenly go, wait a minute, that guy last week was boxed up like Jillian Fat for Better Tomorrow. Everyone was expecting Peking Opera Blues to be the big hit. And then, Better Tomorrow came out and blew it out, and Jillian Fat became the king.
Yeah.
And the same thing, you're going, wait a minute, And the same thing, you go, certain movies, thing like, and then other movies get the wrong thing, like The Great Wall. The Great Wall isn't the best movie of all time, but it got pillared in the press for all the wrong reasons. Oh, it's a white hero and everything. Wait a minute, it's a white guy who comes to China, a China that is technologically advanced and has come to buy explosives and learns from the Chinese military and everything. And I was like, it's not trying to, and I'm like, and he's fighting monsters. It's not a true story. It's not like we're making the story of Winston Churchill and we've got Chris Tucker as Winston Churchill. And you're going, no. And that's my problem. I understand that the world has changed and some things we have to do differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I go, now my problem is that sometimes people just go, oh, we can't do that because of this. And I'm going, wait a minute. Like, it's a prime example. About 2 years ago, Gemma Chan did some art movie where she plays Mary Queen of Scots. And I'm like, guys, you do know that Mary Queen of Scots is a real person. And I was going, so and I think Gemma Chan's awesome. I think she's fantastic. But I go, you can't go, it's wrong for this, but it's okay for that person. I'm like, isn't racism as a whole bad? Like, not just, it's wrong if you say it. If I say fuck Scotland, that's okay. But you can't say fuck England. Yeah, it's that thing where you go, wait a minute. You know, and I think sometimes people are politically correct for the wrong reasons. And they make this like, you know, where you go, like, there's a lot of Hong Kong films where, yes, stuff is not politically correct. But you go, it was a movie of its time, or there's a movie that me and Arne are gonna do an audio commentary for, and I said to both Arne and the people released, I said, I want to begin the commentary by saying, look, this is a movie of its time. There are some things in this that are considered politically incorrect, but if you're watching this movie, you know exactly what this movie is about. Don't expect it to be politically correct. Like, it's one of those where you go, okay, I know exactly what the subject matter is, but I shouldn't be going, oh my God, somebody fired a gun. Where did this violence come from? You know, it's like, I understand if we're making Thomas the Tank Engine and we turn it into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it might mislead people. You know, but you go, if we're making this thing, it's like a Braveheart. Mel Gibson as William Wallace, and we're going to change the battlefield to this because it's easier. And everything. And you go, like, even when you're making a historical movie, sometimes you got to adjust. Sometimes not because of anything but budget or logistics, and you're like, and the funny thing is, it's always how people will accept it for one thing, but not for something else. Like a friend of mine is like, I used to be really into, like, World War II history when I was a kid and everything. But one of my friends always had an issue with the Battle of Britain movie because he's like, oh, look, but that's a Spitfire Mark 7 and that's a this and that's an. I'm going, because that's all they had, dude. They didn't have thing. But he could completely buy into wuxia movies or V the series. And, like, wait a minute, these aliens are so technologically advanced that they can't make water. And blah, blah, like, but he can buy into that in those movies. But now Battle of Britain's wrong because, that gun sight is the wrong gun sight. I was like, dude, they didn't have a choice. Of course, now with CGI, you can change it. But you go, and I think that's
weird selective suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, it's why it's going to upset people. I always think the what's the name? The second Hulk movie with Endor. Yeah. I like the fact that his entire origin is told in the opening credits. Because you know what, guys? I've seen the trailer. I know this guy's going to turn into the Incredible Hulk at some point. As much as I love origin movies, that's why I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies are good. Because we never had an origin. We know he got bitten by a spider. But it's like, it's like I remember watching something recently and they were talking about Terminator 2, how, we're going to keep it quiet that Arnold's the good guy. And he goes, but then what do you do with the press and the trailer showing he's a good guy? Before the movie came out, or like when a movie's under wraps and then the toy markets release the images of the toys, and you go, or like proving I'm a Star Wars geek when the Phantom Menace came out and the soundtrack's released and it has the death of Qui-Gon. you go, really, guys, like, and then of course now you have the other thing where, like, someone's suing because Anna de Armas wasn't in yesterday. And it's like, okay, guys, that trailer was cut while the movie was in production. And it just shows one thing. It never at any point does the poster or anything say, and the same thing. 30 years ago, I can understand that you might have seen a clip and gone to see the movie under assumption. But what, you didn't look at the internet and you didn't check the poster and you didn't think, that's a bit weird. You're like, Sean Connery's in this movie and he's not on the poster. He's not in the opening credits. And like, that's when people go, oh, I'm going to do a lawsuit because, I burnt myself with hot coffee. What do you mean? Well, the coffee was too hot. Yeah, but it's hot coffee. It's like, I go, sometimes now the political correctness and madness has become too much that you go.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that you like. You go.
People don't want to take any accountability for anything themselves, even if it's just their own.
Like there's, there are shows that when I was a kid, I can't, that now I wouldn't be, I shouldn't be watching ever again, like, Elena of Hot Mum or something. I go, some of these shows, you look at it, you go, okay, yeah, that was genuinely wrong. But then you go, certain shows, you go, actually, if you watch Elena of Hot Mum, the 3 Anglo-Indian characters, one of which is played by a white guy who happened to speak perfect Hindu and had been a captain in the Gurkhas and grown up in India. The 3 Indian characters are actually the clever ones who are constantly saving the British characters. Yeah. And I go, it's like, yes, okay, Ghost in the Shell was a bad idea. Let's put Scarlett Johansson and make her look Japanese and imply that inside every Asian person there's a white person trying to get out. You go, yes, that's wrong. But then when I was a kid, Nick Fury looked like David Hasselhoff.
Very true.
He did not look like Samuel L. Jackson. How is that acceptable?
I'm sure we're both fans of Remo Unarmed and Dangerous, and that Joel
exactly.
Gray.
I love Joel Gray's performance. And of course, I'd love to know what you didn't have Mako's phone number. You didn't know how to contact James Hong or any other Asian actor. You're like, really? But you go, that's the thing. And it's something you look at Remo and you go, if Remo had been marketed properly, but now people are, oh yeah, well, God, can't talk about Remo because of that. And then like even the TV spin-off is Roddy McDowell playing to them, like really, like
doubling down.
Yeah, and I go, of course, you look at something, you go, okay, that's wrong. The problem is sometimes you go, like, okay, Ben Kingsley as Gandhi. It's a fantastic performance. But let's look at Ben Kingsley ethnicity and you go, well, hang on a minute. It doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
And the same way, I saw something recently and someone said, oh, I'm only going to play my exact ethnicity in movies now. And another Asian American actor went, well, then you're going to starve. Because I go, guys, it is the one acting.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to get to that point where it's like, oh, I'm sorry, but I can only play someone who was born and raised in Croydon and then moved to Hong Kong when they were 21. That's the only role I can play. Because, and I always got to be able to go, if you think that roles in the West for certain minorities are limiting, come and be a white actor in Asia. And, it happens the same to us. Like we always get things, but I go, like, that's the kind of thing that people forget, that it's like you sometimes go, guys, we all know that sometimes you'll make a joke that someone who doesn't know you or know your relationship with someone is going to think is racist or wrong. But to you and your friend, it's completely a shortcut. It's like perfectly acceptable. Like my dad, for instance, if someone called me a bastard, my dad was like, what the, like, how dare they say that's an insult to me? And I was like, no, Dad, it doesn't mean what you think, but to him, he was very old school that, no, you're that's claiming you're an illegitimate child of mine. Like, that's an insult. And I was like, no, we've been watching the young ones. It's like, it doesn't go further than that. And I think that's the thing. So I don't know how we got to this.
It's an interesting thing. And I think one of the things that we're hearing so much is this idea that people need to sort of be able to, if they can't see a version of themselves on screen, they can't relate. But for us, essentially, that there could be no love of Hong Kong cinema if you weren't able to watch a different culture and still empathize with them. It's a really important thing.
It's like, when John Lewis was like, oh, I'm not going to do Way of the Dragon because Bruce Lee wants. It's like, it's a film for an Asian audience. The same. It's like, you got to look at certain things. Like, okay, it's like. Okay, I'm going to be kind of when Stallone recently was complaining that he doesn't have a percentage of Rocky and everything. I go, it's kind of that with him. I go, well, they offered you all this money, and he's like, I only got paid X amount of money for Rocky, and I'm like, okay. Rocky is the movie that broke you, that made you think, and it opened all these doors for you. They originally offered you X amount of money just for your script, but you insisted that you play the lead role. So they went, okay, then the budget has to be lowered. Your fee has to be lowered. And playing Rocky for $30,000 gave you the world. It's like, it's not like for the next movie they went, oh, you worked for $30,000 last time. And I go, sometimes I think people are like, it's sometimes you go, when is enough enough? When is like the thing? And it's and it's also sometimes when people are backlash before anything's been said, or like when I posted the stuff the other day about Ip Man 5, there's people going, oh, blah, 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 this is just, and I'm like, we don't know anything about the story yet. We don't know, like,
he could just be directing it. It could be a prequel. It could be his son. It could be anything. It's too early.
You know, and the funny thing is, Donnie and me had joked about it because he'd been like, well, you didn't see me actually die, you know. And I said this, and someone sent me a private message complaining that, oh, you would say that. I was going, no, I was going, guys, actually, if you watch the movie, we know that Ip Man is sick. But I said, you know, we see Bruce again at the funeral, but we don't see him actually. We don't see Ip Man die on the screen. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and that's the thing that people forget, that there are so many movies that on paper, remember, like using Stone again. When Stallone announced he was doing Rocky Balboa, the whole world is like, what the hell? Oh, Stallone's an idiot. Oh, it's a fantastic movie. Yeah, like Daniel Craig as James Bond. You know, they do the press launch on HMS Belfast in London. They have Daniel Craig arrive on a Royal Navy World War II motorboat in a tuxedo. But because Daniel Craig is not a member of the Royal Navy, he had to wear a life jacket as a passenger.
Mm-hmm.
So the world, ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate spy, and there's a guy in a tuxedo with a huge life jacket, and everyone's like, "What a pussy!" Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Then the movie comes out. Oh, it's the best movie of all time. Oh, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's that thing where you go, like,
give it a chance.
Maverick. Oh, yeah, it's going to be this. It's going to be that. Whatever. Tom Cruise knows what he's doing. You know, you go. There's movies we've all thought are going to be shit that turned out to be fantastic, and there's other movies that we thought were going to be great, and we sat there in the cinema going, really? Like, maybe if I stay, they're going to play the real movie, the better one. They're trying to weed out the bad people. Like, same with bands. Like, I love Queen until its most recent. Roger Taylor and Brian May, how much can we milk the old version? Like I liked Bohemian Rhapsody the same way I liked Mamma Mia.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to see the crazy world that Freddie Mercury was in. I wanted to see him in Studio 54 and the madness and everything. That's why I thought that Rocket Man was better, because Rocket Man at least went, we'll do some crazy fantasy stuff. And his stuff was like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody was the greatest hits collection, and just, it was like a bad TV movie to me. Like, it was a TV movie with a big budget.
Yeah, I was like, movie.
Yeah, you know, like, and I think that's the problem sometimes. It's something when they go, oh, but we've got the family involved. I go, like when we did Fearless, and Hoya Jazz family tried to sue because, you know, Hoya Jazz didn't really die like that. And we were like, well, yeah. And then they tried to complain about Chen Zhen, and someone that we had to point out, Chen Zhen is a fictional character. You know, like Chen Zhen isn't real. Like, you know, like, it's one thing if you're suing on behalf of Hoya Jazz, but you can't sue on behalf of a fictional character. If that's the case, then Nai Quan can sue because he created Chen Zhen. But, you know, but people were like, oh, no. And it's the same way when Jet announced Fist of Legend. Oh, he's doing a remake of Fist of Fury. That's wrong. That's just bad. That's just evil. Oh, Fist of Legend's the greatest movie of all time, Mike. It's fantastic. And I'm like, didn't you just hate it 5 minutes ago? You know? And I think that's the thing. And it's the same thing. Like, there are some movies that I hated at one point and I've loved it. There's other movies that and there's movies where I've discovered stuff or realized, oh, that's what the director was trying to do. Like, okay, if you look at Shiri, you know, the classic Korean movie,
Korean, yeah,
and Purple Storm, both came out about the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Shiri has that fantastic opening sequence. You know, the field of corn, North Koreans come running out, and there's that montage showing you these people are crazy. They will kill everyone. Blah blah blah. Purple Storm opens on a boat in Hong Kong Harbor, and Josie Ho and Daniel Wu fighting some people. The original opening of Purple Storm was a burning Buddha in Cambodia, and the camera pans down, and there's all these soldiers crying, and Gumgok Leung's character is like, you know, we will take revenge, we will do all this stuff. But the original cast for Purple Storm was Tony Leung Garfei and Louis Koo. And just as they were about to start shooting, Tony Leung Garfei decided he no longer wanted to be the father of the younger character. He wanted to be the brother.
Okay.
And they had a big disagreement, and then Tony Leung quit, and then Louis Koo quit. But they'd already spent a chunk of budget. So they lost all that money that there's no. So like Teddy Chenoweth goes to me, I can't go and talk to the audience. Go, now look, imagine all this is happening before we get to this scene. You know, but you go, that's the thing. You see the opening of Sherry, and you're immediately like, okay, this is the level we're dealing with. Like these people are thing, whereas Purple Storm kind of like begins slow and builds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same thing that sometimes you just go, stuff gets taken out. Same with like sometimes with a transfer of a film or something. Sometimes people get, this is what we're dealing with. And yeah, it's great that you've got a Laserdisc version from Zimbabwe, but you know what? We don't have the rights for that. And it's like when sometimes people go, oh, why have you got a new dub instead of the old dub? And you're trying to say, well, the old dub was for a shorter version of the film. Because often the international versions will be like 5 to 10 minutes shorter at least.
Mm-hmm.
You go, if once like Hong Kong Legends and started putting out the full-length versions, you go, oh, the original dub doesn't fit. And then people go, oh, but can't you have the old dub? And you go, for 20% of the audience, that's acceptable. But you'll have all your mainstream audience go, wait a minute, why is the sound so bad? Why is
this is wrong?
This voice, and then suddenly for one line, he's got another voice, and then it goes back to his voice, and it's like, okay, now with Blu-ray you go think, and also the same thing, certain rights. Okay, if I can't give you that version for this country, because we've then got to go back and renegotiate. Like we said, Crying Freeman should have been the movie thing. Like, okay, of all the people to dub in Crying Freeman, they dub Mark's wife. They don't dub Checky Cario or Yoko Shimada or Messiah Kato. They dub Mark's wife, who speaks perfect English. And it's great they use Deborah Unger's really sexy, husky voice, but you're like, wait a minute.
A really weird choice.
Yeah, and the same way when you watch, like, say, Greystoke, and you go, Andy McNeil didn't know until she got to the cinema that she'd been dubbed. Because originally they'd shot stuff where they explain her character has grown up in America, and that's why she's got an American accent. But then they cut those scenes shortening the movie, and then people went, wait a minute, why is this English girl got an American accent? The same way a friend of mine had introduced me to a British actor called Clive Mantle, who was originally Nuclear Man 1 in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Oh, wow.
And he went to the premiere and found out he'd been cut out completely. And then if you compare it to Hong Kong, for In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar-wai shot the entire story also from the perspective of Tony Leung's wife and Maggie Cheung's husband. And Roy Cheung plays Maggie Cheung's husband. Roy Cheung shot the whole movie.
Jesus.
And at the premiere, found out all he was going to hear was his voice. And I remember him being like, I took my mum to the premiere to be like, look, I've finally made a movie where I'm not a triad, I'm not a gangster, I'm not a bad guy. And his mum was like, oh, what, you watched this for 5 minutes? Like all I can hear is you off camera going, hello, honey, I'm just going out. That sometimes you go, it's stuff gets changed, or like people pass away and we've got to work out how to get around it. Or Police Story 2, Maggie Cheung didn't come back after she got cracked on the head with the things. And it's only now when you look at you never see her face again. It's all shot from behind. It's all thing. There are movies I've watched something on. Okay, today I was watching Jim Carter. Okay, the greatest movie of all time. The Skill of Gymnastics, The Killer Karate. I was listening to it with this fan. These guys had done an audio commentary, an unofficial audio commentary.
And
the audio commentary is okay. Like, most of it is sadly them just talking shit about the movie. Like, they haven't really done anything about the actors or anything. They're like, oh, did this guy direct Enter the Dragon? But they don't know who, apart from like Richard Norton and Kurt Thomas, they don't know anyone. They're just like, oh, that girl's pretty, that guy's this, But they pointed out a whole bunch of stuff that I'd never noticed before, like how many times certain shots are repeated, or one sequence was shot, obviously with multiple camera angles.
We've just used the angles.
You start realizing, wait a minute, I just saw those guys run left to right. Now I'm seeing them run right to left. Now I'm seeing them run horizontal. Wait a minute, this is the exact same shot.
Just flipped around a few times.
And it needed someone to point it out. And as soon as someone points out, you're like, how the hell did I not notice this? Like the other day, I'd found a picture and I'd sent it to Byron Mann from Street Fighter. He's a very friend of mine. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's the scene where like Chun-Li stabs me. After Chun-Li has stabbed me, I'm like, what? And he's going, yeah, Chun-Li stabs my character at one point, and I'm recovering. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's in the movie. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, watch this scene. I watched the scene. And it's the scene where Chun-Li, Ming-Na Wen comes in dressed as like a circus performer. And Byron Mann is, Ryan Ken are fighting her two assistants. And Ming-Na Wen comes up and stabs Byron Mann in the stomach. And then Byron Mann and Ryu and Ken walk out the scene. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's in the movie. But I've never, but I was like, oh, I guess she just punched him. And then suddenly I'm going, wait a minute, she stabbed him. But it's like that same thing. But he was like, yeah, you didn't notice that? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's that same thing that sometimes, you'll talk to people and you're going to go, okay, so this movie, this has this specific meaning. They're like, no. Like I remember in the mid-90s when a lot of Americans really first discovered Hong Kong cinema. I remember reading an article, and it claimed that the heroic trio, Michelle Yeoh wears red and performs martial arts because she represents China and its martial tradition. Anita Mui is more stylish and dressed in blue because she represents Taiwan and the sophistication of Taiwan. Maggie Cheung wears trashy lingerie and speaks English because she represents the throwaway culture of Hong Kong. And I asked Ching Si-dong, and Ching Si-dong went, mate, Michelle Yeoh can fight, and she likes the color red. Anita Mui cannot fight, so she wears a costume where we can put a mask on her and everything. And then proceeds to tell me how Taiwan was under martial law until the early 90s, as well. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's point. And he goes, Maggie Cheung was sexy and she speaks English. You're like, that was it. That was how much thinking went it. Same like on Lethal Panther. Godfrey, why is this girl dancing? And Godfrey's answer is politically incorrect, but that's why. Why is this happening? Because we could. Sometimes you go, you can overanalyze something and find out that the person didn't mean it that way. I remember I'd written an article about Daniel Wu when Gen X Cops came out, and the way it was printed, I'd written, in this movie, Daniel Wu comes across as a spoiled, stupid, rich kid. Turn the page, which is exactly what his character is in the movie. A kid who's pretending to be a gangster, da-da-da-da-da. But the way it was printed, Daniel was like, why are you saying I'm a spoiled, stupid, rich kid? I was like, wait a minute, turn the page. Oh, okay. Holy shit, I could have started a war. Like mistranslation, a bit of editing. A friend of mine did a movie in England, and on the poster it had a quote from Kim Newman saying like John Woo style action in a UK setting. Kim Newman. I think Kim Newman's actual quote was a shitty attempt at John Woo style action in a UK setting. And then cut that bit, use that quote. And it's that, well, Kim Newman did say that, but he then proceeded to say other things, but we cut that. And I think, like we said, that's the thing sometimes that you go, it's, like say Cynthia Rothrock. Cynthia Rothrock is awesome. But, she's barely remembered in Hong Kong. Like people are like, oh yeah, she did those movies like 30 years ago. It's, and the same thing, like sometimes when you call people for interviews, people also sometimes have to say, sometimes people are like, I don't want to talk about that movie. I don't like that movie, right? I had a problem with it. I don't want to talk about it. I remember for Premiere Asia, I shot an interview with the main actress, Shin Yun Kim, for My Wife is a Gangster. I had to shoot a 3-hour interview because her husband, who was her manager, was like, she hasn't just done My Wife is a Gangster, she's done all these other movies, and we refuse to do the interview if you're only going to talk about My Wife is a Gangster. And I'm like, but that's the movie we're releasing. And it was so I was like, okay, fine. And I shot all this additional footage just to be like, okay. And I was making one of those like tape 1, background, tape 2, bollocks, tape 3, My Wife is a Gangster. But it's sometimes you go thing, and sometimes same thing you go, people pass away or people think like Richard Earn, God bless him. Richard was Richard was an uncle to everyone. We all knew him as Uncle Richard. And I've been for ages saying that, Richard, I want to sit down with you, do a proper like career interview. We'd always talked about it. And it was always like, we'll do it later. And then during COVID, like what I think a lot of people don't say is, it was sometimes me and Arne were breaking the law when there were more than two of us in the same location, or with our masks off. Yeah, like it was that thing. So sometimes some people are like, we can't do the interview because I can't meet you face to face, and we don't want to do it over Zoom because for a Blu-ray release or whatever, the quality is an issue. You know, and there were there's Darren Shalavi, God bless him, Brad Allen, both of those like people that boom, they were gone. Yeah, like Darren. I spoke to Darren probably every week for 25 years. Like wherever we were in the world, we caught up. We were always thing. And both Darren and Brad, it was something I'd spoken to them a couple of days before they passed. And to this day, I'm still expecting Darren to pop up. I mean, like, Mike, you're not going to believe what happened. Like, and same with Brad. Like, I just found a whole bunch of footage, including all this footage when I first heard of Brad Allen when he was shooting a thing in Australia for my godfather. And like all this footage, it's of the young Brad Allen, a Brad Allen who didn't know at the time you could speed up film. So he was like, I got to be as fast as those guys, and the guy who was coordinating the movie was my late godfather. He was an Indonesian Chinese stuntman who became kind of like my godfather. Mm-hmm. He was a very sarcastic git. So he was basically going, oh, these are the worst stuntmen from Hong Kong and Taiwan. One of them was like the Taiwanese Olympic gymnastics champion. And, so Brad was like, holy shit, these are the worst stunt guys in Hong Kong. I got to be better than them just to be the worst. Yeah. And I remember on Gorgeous, like Jackie was constantly going, Brad, slow down. Like, you're like, boom, like, and that's the thing. There's things where you go, I wish I'd interviewed that person. Like with Richard, I messaged him and be like, Richard, and he was like, okay, when COVID finishes, and we can do it. And I'd said to him, because he lived near, I said, look, I can come every day for a week and get 20 minutes, whatever you want. I said, because also with some people, I don't want to interview them for a specific movie. I want to interview them because they're worth interviewing. They've had a life and they've had that thing, and you go, you don't want to be in that situation where years later you go, oh, I wish I'd spoken to that guy or I'd heard that story. And there are some interviews I can't use until people unfortunately pass away because they've said things in the interview that I go, I want to publish, but I can't. Like there's stuff that I'm sitting there going, oh shit. Like there's one time with Jackie where I was like, I'd gone to try and get an interview with Jackie for the low-ray movies. Mm-hmm. And it was just as COVID was kind of starting, and Jackie had just come back to Hong Kong, and his assistant goes, well, Jackie's at the office in Clearwater Bay, near where you live, Mike. Why don't you just go there and see Jackie and ask him? Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so I went there, and they go, oh, Jackie's in there. I'm like, but he's asleep. I'm like, well, wake him up. I'm like, I can't wake him up. So they're like, okay, how about this? We'll make some coffee, and he'll smell the coffee, and he'll wake up, which is what happened. And I was like, hey, Jackie, like, I know you're really busy. Could I do an interview with you about the low-ray movies? He's like, oh, I don't fucking want to talk about them. I went, no, just we'll do one interview covering all the low-ray movies, maybe an hour, just your thoughts about that situation. And he's like, no, I don't want to talk about those movies. I was like, okay. And I was like, well, okay, I'll head off. He goes, no, let's stay and talk. And we sat there and talked about the low-ray movies. And then after about an hour and a half, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to leave. He's like, oh, do you have a car? I went, no. He goes, you're going to call a taxi? I went, no, I'm just going to walk like the 200 meters to the main road. I'll get a taxi or a bus. And he goes, I drive you. I went, what, to the end of the road? He went, yeah. And I was like, oh, great. So I go to the car, we drive to the end of the road. And Jackie goes, where are you going? I went, well, I was going to go to the train station. He goes, okay, I'll drive you to the train station. And I'm like, okay. And instead of going to the train station, we turned right and went to the old Shawrunners.
Like Clearwater Bay.
And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, Big Mike, I made all these movies as short. And starts telling me all the stories. I'm going, I don't have a camera or an audio recorder, and my phone's on fumes. And I'm like, this is awesome. And we're talking, and Jackie's telling me, oh, on this thing, we did this, and you did that. And I'm like, And then he goes, oh, let's go to Golden Harvest. And we went to the old Golden Harvest, which is now a housing estate. It doesn't even have a fucking sign saying it was Golden Harvest. And we sit there, and Jackie's telling me about Golden Harvest. I'm going, and I'm sort of thinking, like, well, Jackie get upset if I go, oh, thank God, can I just go home and get my camera or get my thing? And he's like, no. And we're spending like 6 hours driving around all these locations with Jack. And I was like, part of me was going, this is the greatest thing of all time as a fanboy. Like, this is fantastic. Part of me's going, I should be recording this. I should be. This is unfair. But I was like, he was in such a thoughtful. I think I was going, if I go, can you stop for 5 minutes while I run off and buy a charger or something? Or the mood will change.
Yeah, the mood would have been lost.
Yeah, and you go, sometimes that's the thing.
How much was he speaking that candidly because he knew it wasn't being recorded?
Yeah, and sometimes that's the thing. It's like, as we said, like, there's sometimes where people told me stuff, and I'm going, I want to talk about that. And in the same way, there's sometimes things where you say something and you realize people didn't know that. Like when we did the commentary for Legacy of Rage, I mentioned the tragedy of Regina Kent. I go, it's really tragic about Brandon and Regina Kent. And Ronnie made a joke about, oh yeah, the tragedy is you used to try and chase her. I was like, no, Ronnie, she passed away. He was like, what? And like we stopped the thing, and he was like, oh, I didn't know. And the thing where it was like, he literally was like, I didn't know. And you go, that's the thing. That it's like sometimes, like Robin Shue from like Mortal Kombat and everything. Me and Robin we both had a really good mutual friend, and that friend passed away, and Robin didn't know. And then Robin, when he came back from Mortal Kombat 2, was like, where's Stan? I was like, Stan passed away. And it had been like 8 months earlier, but Robin had been off shooting movies and didn't know. And it's something where you suddenly go, holy shit. Like, to him, it was just like, oh, fuck, I'm going to call Stan, like next week. And that's the thing. And like you said, sometimes people will talk candidly because they know it's not going to go anywhere, or they know something. And that's the thing, like, there are like things where, like when we were doing Fearless, one night we were talking about Dragonfight, and Dragonfight is completely unknown in Hong Kong. Someone was like, wait a minute, Jet Li and Stephen Chow made a movie in America? When? And I'm like, like 20 years ago. And then Jet's like, what? Next you're going to be saying, none of you know that I directed a movie. And the whole room went quiet. And they're like, and Jet's like, Mike, and I was like, Born to Defense, co-directed by Tracy Ming. And Jet was like, nobody knows. And you go, that's the thing, that certain projects, like Bloodsport sat on the shelf for a year. There's an ultimate reality where Van Damme signed a contract with Golden Harvest that he was offered before Bloodsport came out. Because while he was shooting Bloodsport,
they're doing the deal for no reason.
It was being edited and had been released. So like Frankie Chan offered him a role. Golden Harvest were like, well, we could use this guy for international. Keith Cook, Golden Harvest wanted to sign Keith Cook. Keith Cook should have been a bigger star. And it's just, you go, Cynthia Rothrock should have been an executioner with Stallone. You go, those things that just came close, like, and everything, But no, I mean, it's thing. Now, young sir, I hate to be a dick, but I got to jump off because it's like 12:40 in the morning.
You're not being a dick. You've given me like 3 hours, literally 3 hours, Mike.
I'm worried that if I've gone off course and not given you what you need.
No, because I think let's do an official goodbye. So
okay.
Thank you everybody for watching, and thank you for everyone for making it to the end of this mammoth marathon of awesomeness, courtesy of Mike. Thank you, Mike, for doing it.
Okay.
We will see you again